Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Planning and Development Public Hearing for March 4th. It is 10:31, and we are calling our hearing to order. I do not have any major comments this morning. We are just looking forward to hearing from the public. Senator Rahman.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today with us and on Zoom. And we are looking forward to hear from all our speakers. Thank you. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And before I forget, I was told that CTN is having some trouble with microphones, so they ask that we are not more than 6 inches away from our microphones when we speak and to not move very much. So this should be a fascinating visual for those of you at home. Senator Gordon, lean on in.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The not moving part, I don't think is in the Senate rules, so I'll just freeform it. But public hearings are extremely important, as we know, so look forward to giving people full opportunity today on the bills on the agenda, and I'm in listening and learning mode. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Haynes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Looking forward to it.
I love it. Short and sweet. Okay. I believe up first is Liza Arulampalam, and I believe she is running late. So we're going to move on to number 2, Ian Scoggard. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Connect Spring Glen Church. Number 2, when you come up, just go ahead and touch the button in front of the microphone to speak. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
And
I
you
am
don't
not
look like Ian.
Ian Scoggard. But Ian Scoggard, I'm Reverend Caitlin O'Brien with Congregations Organized for a New Connecticut. And Ian Scoggard, who's one of our housing team leaders, is not able to be here. I said I could read his testimony. If you have any questions for me and in terms of how Connect came to work on this issue and how we've been researching housing and what might be our piece of solution of being a part of the solution, you can feel free to ask me any questions. Dear co-chairs and members of the Planning and Development Committee, I want to express my support of House Bill 5396, an act concerning affordable housing development on certain land owned by a religious organization. My name is Ian Scoggard, and I'm a resident of New Haven and a member of Spring Glen Church in Hamden. I'm also a member of the Congregations Organized for a New Connecticut housing team. I support HB 5396 because it offers a less encumbered path for religious organizations to build much needed housing on their property by promising a smooth review process that would not place burdens on what are often limited finances and limited human capacity in the leadership of faith institutions. It would also ensure that housing remains affordable in the long term, fulfilling a religious institution's commitment to serve and care for the least among us for generations to come. Before joining Spring Glen Church, I was a member of Church of the Redeemer in New Haven, which sadly closed its doors about 7 years ago. After 185 years of worship and ministry in the city of New Haven. Many members of the congregation wanted to see the property converted to affordable housing units. However, the path forward seemed so daunting to us, and no one felt they could commit themselves to that protracted process. Instead, the congregation voted to sell the property to a private developer who converted our sanctuary and meeting house into 20 market rate apartment units. Every time I drive by the Church of the Redeemer, I still regret that decision and the missed opportunity we had to leave behind a meaningful legacy of what is a core and precious principle for our religious organization, and that is to serve and care for our neighbors. I ask the committee to please help religious organizations leave a meaningful legacy of their worldly missions and help pass HB 5396. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
Thank you very much for reading his testimony. We appreciate it. Any questions so far? Seeing none, we will be seeing you again, I think. Thank you so much. Number 3, Reverend Littlepage, please, from the Episcopal Church. I believe he is online. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Canon D. Littlepage, and I serve on the staff of the Bishop of the Episcopal Church in Connecticut, also referred to as ECCT, which comprises 143 parishes and worshiping communities across the state. I serve as the Canon for Advocacy, Racial Justice, and Reconciliation. In early 2025, the bishops and diocesan leaders were considering what to do with property under their auspices. One of the possibilities that was exciting and felt in line with the mission of the church was that of developing housing, with a portion of each project being designated as affordable housing. As this possibility was explored, several locations were identified as likely initial projects, with the locations being in both urban and suburban communities. The exploration of financing options was promising, and things were pointing towards such projects being a viable way forward. However, it became clear that navigating the arduous and inconsistent zoning approval processes town by town by town, with unclear requirements, different requirements for different towns, and timelines that were uncertain, would require an investment of time, financial resources, and human resources that was simply not feasible. As a result, the possibility of adding much needed housing in communities across the state was laid aside. If the proposed YIGBY legislation had been in place at that time, those roadblocks would not have existed, and the possibility of building housing on land owned by ECCT would have continued to be pursued. As Christians, we read over and over in Scripture the admonition that those who have resources should use those resources for the well-being of others, and other religious traditions have similar values. The land of religious communities is a resource that we feel called to use for the well-being of our communities. We are not out-of-town developers looking to make a quick dollar or profit. We are your neighbors and friends, deeply committed to the well-being of the communities in which we live. We are already playing a critical role in our communities by addressing the food insecurity crisis across the state through programs such as food pantries and feeding programs and other volunteer efforts that we do. We want to continue to strengthen our communities and be a part of addressing the housing crisis. Please support HB 5396 and allow us to do so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Just one question. We had already passed last year in 8002 the ability for religious properties to have the ability to do affordable housing within transit districts. Do you know if any of the churches within your purview are planning to do that within transit, that might be within a transit district?
I don't have that information available to me. That is not a part that I know the details around.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Just thought I would ask.
Yeah.
Senator Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And Reverend, thank you for testifying. I just have a question about one part of your testimony. You mentioned about quote unquote uncertain timelines relative to land use decisions by municipalities. I'm just interested in what you mean by that.
Yeah, so according to the folks that I work with, so I was not a part of the property teams that were exploring this, but they were saying that it could take, there was an uncertain amount of time that it would take to get a decision with all the going back and forth. And so that's what I meant with uncertain timelines. And so with the YIGBY legislation, there's a 90-day period for the municipalities to make their decision. So that's what I was referring to.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up. I served 15 years on Woodstock's Planning and Zoning Commission. There are very clear timelines for all sorts of land use decisions. They emanate from state statute, actually. And there are flow charts to actually show it. So I just want people to know that it's not uncertain at all. It's not endless. There are actually very clear timelines. And if municipalities miss the deadlines built into state statute, the default is an automatic approval. So planning and zoning commissions, or I don't know what they do in the cities, but I can tell you for the towns, they're very mindful of these timelines. So I just want people to be understanding that they do follow very strict timelines, step by step, built into state statute. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no other questions at this time, thank you so much, Reverend. We appreciate it. Moving on to number 4, Sean Gio. I do not see him in the room, and I do not see him remote, so we will skip over him for now and come back if he's back. Number 5, Maria Weingarten. I am not seeing her in the room or online. Number 6, Katie Jennings, you're up.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Senator Rahman, Representative Kavros DeGraw, Senator Gordon, Representative Haynes, Senator Needleman, Representative Chafee, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Katie Jennings. I work for the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness, and I am the director of the Connecticut Can End Homelessness campaign. I live in Windsor, just recently moved back to Connecticut from DC. So thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 5396, an act concerning affordable housing development on certain land owned by a religious organization. Really appreciate this hearing today because I think we all share the common goal of wanting our neighbors to have a safe and affordable place to live. And I know we can all work together on that. So this bill represents a thoughtful, sorry, can you hear me? This bill represents a thoughtful and targeted continuation of the housing reforms advanced last year by the Connecticut General Assembly through House Bill 8002. That legislation modernized elements of our zoning framework to expand housing opportunities statewide. I think HB 5396 builds on that progress by unlocking a specific and underutilized resource, which is land owned by religious institutions that are deeply rooted in our communities and often motivated by a mission of service. Just wanted to note that to my reading, it doesn't look like HB 5396 eliminates review or remove environmental safeguards. It doesn't seem to apply in flood hazard areas on historically protected properties or where infrastructure is inadequate. But I think it just creates a predictable time-limited summary review process and removes density and height barriers that often prevent affordable housing from moving forward. I do hear that many municipalities do have very clear timeframes, so I'm very happy to hear that. So we know from other states that procedural barriers matter. In California, recent streamlining reforms, including legislation allowing affordable housing on religious land, have reduced approval timelines for qualifying projects, enabled new partnerships. And while housing production still can take years from approval to occupancy, I think the early evidence shows that when that entitlement process risk is reduced, projects can move forward with greater feasibility. The bill also is compatible with certain federal financing tools, such as the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. And importantly, it works in tandem with House Bill 5361, which ensures that municipalities have clear mechanisms in place to administer and oversee affordable units. And finally, while this bill is not a homelessness bill, it's deeply relevant to homelessness prevention. The majority of people experiencing homelessness in Connecticut are extremely low-income households priced out of the rental market, and increasing the supply of stable, affordable housing is one of the most evidence-based ways to reduce inflow into homelessness over time. So just really appreciate the opportunity to testify. I think this religious and faith-based organizations are kind of offering to help build more units for everyone, and we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Excellent job. You made it just on time.
Thank you.
Katie, since you're with us from CCEH, could you give us a heads up? I mean, I was just thinking about the fact that we had not until late last night enacted partial cold weather, and thinking about how many homeless people we have right now, either living outside, unhoused, or in the system. Could you just give us a sense of the numbers of homeless folks that are experiencing challenges right now?
Yeah, so generally speaking, there's a couple different ways that homelessness is counted. One is a point in time count that is done in January of each year, and the other is sort of an annual number. The point in time count most recently showed, I think, about 3,500 people experiencing homelessness in Connecticut. I think about 800 or so of those were living in unsheltered locations. And then we have a by name list too in Connecticut that is kind of more of a real time estimate. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we have quite a few people living unsheltered and also in shelters.
And would you say those numbers have gone up over the last few years in terms of who is unsheltered?
Absolutely. The number of people living unsheltered between 2024 and 2025, and this is according to that point in time count, increased by 45% in 1 year. That's the unsheltered number. And then homelessness overall has increased in Connecticut between 2021 and 2025 by 44%. So definitely significant increases. There's a new report that was just put out by Data Haven. If you go to the Data Haven website, that shows that when people are interviewed at shelter entry about why they became homeless, the number one reason people give is related to affordability, being evicted, not being able to afford their rent, things like that. So just throwing that in.
Okay, I really appreciate that because it certainly speaks to why church communities that maybe are already providing services for the homeless are interested in moving towards affordable housing for not just the homeless population, but certainly to help prevent. I know the fastest growing number of homeless right now are women over 55 and families. So we
For
certainly want to
sure.
keep as many of those folks housed as we can. Other questions, comments? Seeing none at this time. Thank you so much, Katie, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, and I don't believe she is online yet, is Sarah Fox. So we will move on to number 8, Michelle McCabe from Connecticut Main Street. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairpersons, Representative Kavros DeGraw and Senator Rahman, Ranking Members, Representative Haynes and Senator Gordon, and distinguished members of the Planning and Development Committee. My name is Michelle McCabe. I am the Executive Director of Connecticut Main Street Center, here today to offer my support for SB 363. Connecticut Main Street Center is a statewide nonprofit that works with communities of all sizes to create downtown vibrancy. We work directly with over 60 municipalities, and through our 4 COG members, our total reach extends to over 100 towns, suburbs, and cities. Communities are hungry for new retail and new businesses and frustrated seeing vacant, neglected spaces. Municipalities lack tools to incentivize filling those spaces and recruiting new businesses, particularly if a location isn't blighted but simply empty year after year. SB 363 acknowledges this pervasive issue and offers a new opportunity for communities to do something to solve their vacancy problem. Knowing the concerns with curtailing the autonomy of private property owners and the acknowledgement that many act in good faith to fill their storefronts, Connecticut Main Street would like to offer some suggestions to SB 363 that can accomplish the goals of increasing storefront tenancy and support the property owners in leasing their spaces. First, to restrict the vacancy assessment to designated downtown districts, which could automatically include business improvement districts, special services districts, cultural districts, and CMDA districts, but importantly, to allow communities with none of the above to designate a downtown area. Second, to restrict the vacancy assessment to ground level storefront properties in recognition of the challenges of renting upper floor office spaces. 3, to allow municipalities to increase their fee structure annually if the property remains vacant. And 4, to earmark those funds collected from fees for downtown improvements to provide much needed support for proven best practices and the practitioners to implement them. In recognition that many municipalities and neighborhoods lack the capacity of paid staff and funding for programs such as facade improvement, window display, marketing, pop-up programs, commercial space build-out programs, et cetera, that can support efforts to fill vacancies. We believe that these changes to SB 363 will strengthen the intent of the bill and bring along more downtown stakeholders into the process. It will allow flexibility to municipalities to apply what they know about properties and their owners, and it will provide much needed funding to the activities that help to fill these storefronts in the first place, supporting the community, the property owners, and small businesses and entrepreneurs. Connecticut Main Street wants to express our gratitude to the members of the Planning and Development Committee for understanding the pervasive vacancy issue as one that is hampering downtown vibrancy and your willingness to provide a means to address it. We strongly support SB 363 and look forward to continuing to be a partner in the work of uplifting our communities.
Thank you so much, Michelle. We appreciate it. One question, a concern that I've heard is that this would somehow disenchant our landlords and our owners from wanting to do anything because it would be, another fee on top of what they're already dealing with. So how would you respond to that concern?
I would respond to that concern first and foremost that unfortunately there's already sort of a built-in disincentive for these storefronts to be leased. Some of them are market pressures, and some of them, honestly, and this isn't always the case, are just property owners that maybe don't have the wherewithal to find tenants. I think that what I would say to our suggested changes is that specifically these funds, especially in communities, for example, that don't have the kinds of density of property owners where a business improvement district is really an option. So for those of you unaware, that is when property owners come together and agree to charge themselves an additional mill. And those dollars are typically spent on all the activities that I listed. They're spent on things like streetscape improvements, landscaping, facade, like the small details that actually increase not only foot traffic and vibrancy, but also the attractiveness of renting that space. So what I would say is that this fee, if it's applied the way we're suggesting, it's actually going to help a property owner because either it's going to fund the people like Main Street managers who are there to help find appropriate businesses, but also to be able to find dollars to reinvest in their properties. Maybe something as simple as paying local artists to do a creative window display. I think that in the end, these fees will actually support the property owners themselves, especially if they don't have the means either of time or resources to be able to do more to rent those spaces.
Okay, thank you. Senator Gordon.
Thank you for testifying, and I read through your testimony. I won't go through all my questions for sake of time. I literally have some pages of them, especially given my municipal land use background. I'm happy to meet at some later time to have a discussion. But regarding letting municipalities invoke a business vacancy tax that someone would pay, I'm just trying to understand your testimony. I didn't see it fully in the written testimony. Are you referring to blighted properties or non-blighted properties that a landlord is abiding by whatever rules, regulations in the town or city, and also applicable state and federal laws with their own property that they may well own and pay municipal taxes on? I'm just trying to understand which category is it that you're looking for? Is it both?
Thank you so much for that question. And I just want to say I would love to get together and be able to answer other questions that you may have. This is very specifically about vacancy and not about blight. As you know, and there's been a lot of wonderful work actually done by this committee to help communities in addressing the issue of blight. This is very much about vacant properties that look fine. They just look very empty. And that has its own detrimental effect to the area in which these properties exist. I would like to emphasize, I do truly appreciate how important it is to recognize that these are private properties. But at the same time, I want to also acknowledge that, especially in the areas of a community that we're specifically referencing in our testimony, these are areas of town that truly belong to everybody. And we know that when a person living in a community is in their downtown and they see entire, blocks, and we've all seen this everywhere, of empty storefronts, it really has a detrimental effect, first on the perception that people feel about their own downtown, but also for the businesses around those empty storefronts. It serves to unfortunately drag that entire corridor down. And these are extremely important economic engines to a community. These are where our small businesses get their start. This is where people have jobs that they can typically walk to. And so I do think that we have to acknowledge that these properties, they occupy a very particular place. And we're hoping that legislation like this can help to acknowledge that and provide, again, some additional tools that can help activate those spaces. And ultimately, I do think will help the property owners in the end.
Thank you. I appreciate the testimony. Look forward to having more discussion. I did take away, I'm glad you mentioned that this is not about blight, but it is individual property owners. So it may be in a community, but the community doesn't own it. So I appreciate your mentioning that. So thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
You're welcome. And I would even go further along sort of those lines. I can tell you that, I think we're all familiar with broken windows theory on this committee. And it's, I think, a very similar issue when you think about empty storefront after empty storefront. We have had the experience in Avon where, as a Democratic Town Committee, we have rented empty storefronts for our campaign headquarters. I'm sure the Republicans have as well. And it's amazing how that property might have sat empty for 12 months, 18 months. And suddenly, because we were in there was activity, even though we weren't a business, of course, but because people saw it as a vital, like moving space, then each time it has been rented after the fact, which I think is kind of phenomenal. So could you speak a little more about the pop-up idea? Because I think that that's a really, because in some ways, that's what a campaign is, right? It's sort of like a pop-up for 3 months and then it's out of there. But because people saw activity, then they're like, hey, I think I want to put a bakery here, or I want to, because we did have that happen. So
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that first of all, pop-ups are great. And there are a lot of communities that have used this idea of a pop-up where a business is understood to be in a space on a temporary basis. And so, as you can imagine, it's going to take somebody's time and effort to design a program like that in order to offer it, either if you're the property owner them yourself, and there are many property owners that do this, or potentially a Main Street program or business improvement district that has actually created a program that can support pop-ups. They act exactly as you mentioned, Representative Cavros-DeGraw. They are a catalyst that gets people interested in renting that space. There's Zero Empty Spaces is another organization that specifically uses spaces for artists. They are coming to Connecticut. They're doing their first pop-up in Milford. And it's another example of a proven strategy. But I will also add that it's difficult sometimes to engage property owners to even let their spaces be used for such a purpose. For example, one of our communities wanted to do a pop-up and the property owner was going to charge them a fairly significant amount of money to actually do the pop-up, which again is in their right to do. But with something like this, a Main Street program would have a budget to actually then pay the landlord what they're asking for to do the pop-up. So I see this kind of as a virtuous cycle where it's providing the resources to be able to do the best practices that we see around the country that can help actually fill storefronts.
I just think it's a very interesting idea. And it actually made me think while you were talking about the Halloween spirit shops, which are annoying as all get out, but yet they seem to, they're there for, 2 months and then they tend to fill that space afterwards with a new business. It's because, again, people are seeing the activity and the motion around it. So Representative Zastowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your work you do with the Main Street Center. I'm very familiar with your work. One of the things I think concerns me about this bill is if I understand how it would apply well to if you have a downtown with a single owner of a lot of properties with a lot of vacancy. But as far as if you have a downtown that's got multiple property owners and just a few spaces that just there's not any demand for, and they're competing against each other. I just see a real problem with penalizing the ones that are really trying to get their space rented. But I do get if you have a specific owner, there are a couple of areas near me that have that issue. So I get that. I'm not going to mention any particular towns. But yeah, that I get. But as far as small property owners, this could really hurt them, and it's a disincentive from property investment. But anyway, I just wanted to get that across. So
Absolutely. I think that to the degree that some flexibility or even more flexibility than currently exists in the bill for municipalities would be welcomed, because I think that one, municipalities know their property owners best. So they know who are the actors that are working really hard to try to fill that space, and they know the ones that have a lot of properties that they're sitting on. And I think to the degree that a municipality maybe can reduce fees based on certain activities. So if somebody, and that the municipality can design it, I'm just suggesting some things. Like, for example, if they are willing to make their space available for a pop-up or a nonprofit or something like that, then their fee gets reduced or perhaps, X'd out. I think the key, and I believe that this legislation is opt-in. So if you happen to be, for example, a municipality where this just isn't applicable, you don't have that many vacancies, or you don't have that many, or your property owners and you know that this is not going to help the situation, you simply don't do it. But in the instances where it can be helpful, I think that the more opportunity we offer municipalities to tailor this in a way that they know will be effective, it'll be great, because then it will give them the tool that they need for the properties that I really think that all of us sitting here can picture in our minds, at least one place where we live, where we're like, oh, geez, I wish that there was something we could do about it.
Yes, and I appreciate your comments as well. The other concern that I have is on smaller towns, it might be a major burden on property owners if there could be a way to restrict this to a higher population level or some other metric, because I could see I could see this. I would just prefer to see abuse of this situation if it's going to be a large enough area. And at this point, I think this is still, I believe, a work in progress. I can't support it the way it is, but there may be some modifications that could possibly work. As I said, I appreciate your comments, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
We
If
are
I
open to
may,
suggestion.
if I may just make one comment as far as the smaller towns are concerned, I would hope that we could actually not necessarily put a population threshold, simply because, again, I think that if this is an opt-in, then it would allow for the towns that know that this isn't right for them to simply not do it. But I will say that with our work with a lot of the rural communities, one, there are so few opportunities and tools that they have available to them. Some of it, like receivership, for example, is restricted by population, or two, they don't have enough properties, as mentioned, to put a business improvement district together so that there are those resources in the community. And potentially, if a smaller town is able to just identify, like just their village center, it wouldn't be town at large, but just really that one section that represents their town center, I think it might give our smaller towns a tool that right now they don't really have much available to them, that can allow them opportunities that they currently don't have to invest in Main Street beautification and support. So I would like to just make a plug for those communities to have that
Again,
opportunity.
we may not specifically agree on this, but I appreciate your comments. And again, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And we are open to suggestion, I think is where we're at with this. I appreciate you saying it's a work in progress. Representative Haynes.
Good morning, and thank you for being here, Michelle. It's great to see you. Just a couple of things. One, first of all, thank you so much. It's nice to hear that there's suggestions to the bill language. I particularly like the fact that ground level only, especially in places where there are like 2 and 3 families or 2 or 3 stories or whatever, and upper spaces are even more difficult than, ground floor or display bottom floor. So that I think is really great. Just a question, can't towns do this anyway, set up their own ordinance and do this if they feel it's necessary? Again, I understand that this is an opt-in, but at the same time, I kind of agree with my colleague and wonder if in a small town there might be, who knows, politics or whatever else that would get in the way, of all of a sudden, somebody who's been trying to rent forever. I mean, our downtown is district right there in East Haddam Village, and how we're trying to do something, but we still have the redevelopment agents. They've been working on this for 25 years. And so there's storefronts there that haven't been able to be rented just because it's just nothing's happening. Plus we had a bridge thing and, all that. So, but can't they do it anyway? I mean,
It's my understanding that they cannot. It's my understanding based on what communities have said to us about this issue, and we've heard from many of them that are interested in state enabling legislation that would allow them to levy this fee. I'm not expert enough to know if maybe we're all mistaken, but certainly my sense from economic development staff in municipalities that it would require something at the state level to allow them to do this.
yeah, I mean, being a municipal leader myself, to try and get an ordinance passed is crazy and very difficult at times. So maybe coming to Hartford is a little easier, believe it or not. So maybe that's the answer. But thank you again for your testimony, and thank you for your suggestions to the language of the bill, we'll definitely take that up, I hope. Thank you so much, Mrs. Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Haynes. Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, and thank you for your testimony. I'm curious to know if model has been deployed in other jurisdictions, and if so, what evidence there is that this stimulates the kind of activity that we'd hope to see.
That's a great question. I have more information about where they're either considering or have implemented and less on efficacy, although I think there's some information out there that I can forward to the body. New York State is considering what they're calling a commercial vacancy tax. And San Francisco has enacted something along those lines. I will say that states seem to be leaning now more towards commercial vacancy registration. Ultimately, it's the same thing. It is an annual fee, but it comes with the additional added bonus, so to speak, of getting properties to have an actual human being with actual contact information associated with them. And when things change hands, it's sort of an easier way to have all of that sort of saved in one place. And those sort of that slight change to the language is in Florida, California, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Georgia, and Missouri, being enacted in different municipalities there.
Well, I know we have a bill in housing about natural person registration requirements for housing. So maybe this is sort of a similar analog, and then we're trying to solve a problem, and often there are multiple legal entities involved in the ownership of a property, determining who owns it and who you need to contact if there's an issue or issues with the property. So that's an interesting idea as well.
Absolutely. And I think that some of the things that, again, extraordinarily grateful to planning and development because of the attention that you have started bringing to commercial properties. We have a lot of, blight and other regs around residential, which is really helpful, but obviously we're biased. We only care about main streets and downtowns. I mean, we care about more than that, but in terms of our work effort, that's our focus. And so these nuances are really important to give these new tools that are specifically targeting those commercial properties, especially in high visibility, really important areas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm just trying to understand some of your testimony. So let's say that I'm a business owner, law abiding. I pay my municipal and state and federal taxes. I cause no blight. There's an economic downturn. I've renovated my business, and now I can't put more money into it to renovate it further because it's an economic downturn. And I just don't have the money right now. It's my property. I own it. It's in good standing. And I may have future plans depending upon what happens. And I may not want to have a pop-up or anything else because I have other plans for what I'm doing and have already invested in it for certain specific purposes. And that's someone's right as an individual property owner, as you know. So I'm just a little confused when and I'm trying to understand the mechanics of what you've said. One would impose a tax on someone just because it's non-blighted and vacant. It's their property, but then churn around and the municipality would use it to help the business owner. I'm just a little confused how taking money from them in a tax, that's what a fee is, to then help them if maybe they're already struggling financially and that's why things are on hold with their non-blighted property. I'm just trying to understand if that's what I'm hearing, the testimony, that money from them then goes into this fund that could be used to help them. Yet it takes money from them. So I'm just trying to understand if that's the sequence of events.
Yes. So to answer your two-part question, the first one being, I think, to reiterate that the more flexibility we can provide to municipalities on how they implement the fee structure will take into account property owners or downturns in market, where they can adjust the fees accordingly. Again, not being a tax, but just sort of a fee-based structure. And they can add different elements that can reduce or eliminate the fee based on the property owner's behavior. The second point about collecting fees that then get reinvested in the ecosystem, we have evidence of business improvement districts and special services districts that do exactly what you described. They charge themselves an extra tax, and that tax is being reinvested in the wider ecosystem that makes properties ultimately more valuable. So it may seem like great, vibrant downtowns just happen organically. And the truth of the matter is that they don't. They take an enormous amount of effort and relationship building and applying tools and best practices and being sensitive to changes in the market in order to support your property owners and your residents and your tourists and your small business owners and all of that. So many communities don't have that human being to be able to help with all those things. And they also don't have the funding that can go into the kinds of programs that other communities with a different property owner makeup can take advantage of. Again, signage improvement programs, facade improvement programs. And these are things that also, when you have a number of different people paying into it, those dollars, as you know, economies of scale get stretched much further to the benefit of everybody. I mean, these properties exist in an ecosystem. And yes, we can look at the sort of the negative side effect of the fact that, you don't just think about your one property in isolation of itself. And it's annoying. As we all know, just having neighbors, it can be. But at the same time, it's also what gives our properties value. And the more that everything thrives around that property, the more valuable that person's investment is. So I would say to that property owner, yes, it seems weird, but you'll be glad because that money's going to go to a downtown shopping event that's going to, enhance the value of your property. It's going to potentially go into a fund that you can apply to if you need a little extra capital for a build out. So again, I think we've seen property owners that have seen the value of doing this, and this is just another opportunity, especially in smaller communities, to be able to do that.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would just note that a tax and a fee are the same thing. You're taking money out of people's pockets. Doesn't matter the terminology. But I think we can agree for now to disagree, and I look forward to having more discussion on this. Thank you.
Representative Zaltowski for the second time.
Yes, thank you for the second time. Wouldn't it be, can't you could just accomplish those goals using a tax increment financing district?
Not necessarily. I don't want to pretend like I am the leading expert on TIF. But I will say that TIF dollars, while sometimes can be used for these activities, they aren't always used in that way.
But they can.
Yes, potentially they can. I don't think, though, that a TIF doesn't necessarily address what is the sort of underlying issue that SB 363 is addressing, which is the vacancy challenge. And I do think that, we need to have a creative balance of incentive and less incentivizing tools to be able to move the needle depending on what the reason is for something to remain vacant. And so I think, again, to offer as many opportunities to influence what happens in those spaces, this is, I think, a lot more surgical and specific, which I think would be very helpful.
I'm a great believer in carrots before using sticks. So, I mean, I'm not sure that the fining somebody would be maybe the ultimate approach to getting things done, but that's my opinion. But again, thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair.
I do think as an option and local control that this, is one of those things that a town may say, you know what, we do need some more sticks. I mean, if you, like you said, if you've got a town that has one person or no persons who are the Economic Development Council, that's a challenge in and of itself that is, something to maybe overcome. Senator Rahman.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Thank you for being here today with us and outstanding testimony. Thank you. Your testimony will help us to make bill better. And I like the idea as a registry in the New York or other state is saying, this is why you're having the public hearing, and we want to hear from the public. Yeah, a registry, I think the another way to go. But want to share with you the Manchester last 10 years. I know the broadest is so many property unused. And what do you do with those property? This is what we need to hear from you, how we can use those property, how we can utilize and not going to become a blighted and abandoned property. So this is why we have the concept. Oh, thank you for being here today. And this just start first stuff, start talking and keep talking, and then we can make the bill better. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you. And I am seeing no other questions at this time. Thank you for your lengthy question and answer. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just a couple housekeeping things before we go back to number one, Liza Aralampalam. If you are online, we do need you to accept your promotions when you are asked to accept your promotion to being in the Zoom room for us. So please make sure you remember to do that. Also make sure that you are on mute when you are not speaking, whether you are online or in the room. We appreciate that as well. And as I said, we're going back to number one. When you're ready.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We had a ice delay in Hartford for schools today. Maybe some of you experienced that as well. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Reverend Liza Aralampalam, and I serve as the Senior Minister of Center Church in Hartford. Our congregation is a member of the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance, a broad-based organization of 53 faith institutions. And I am testifying today here in support of expanding affordable housing in Connecticut through YIGBY, Yes in God's Backyard, and in support of HB 5396. The Psalms remind us that the earth is the Lord's and all that is in it. As clergy, we believe that the land that we steward and the buildings that we maintain are not only ministries that we carry out and are not only assets, but they are sacred trusts. YIGBY recognizes what people of faith have long believed. What God has given to us is meant to be used for the flourishing of all of God's children. Our congregation, Center Church, has 2 buildings in Hartford, and we are in our 3rd year of using one of the buildings to serve as only one of 2 cold weather shelters in the city of Hartford. Tonight, and every night between December 1st and April 1st, we will house 51 children of God, 43 in beds and 8 in chairs. I want to briefly speak about how the lack of affordable housing impacts the people that we serve. By the time our guests arrive at our doors, they are living testimonies to how our state has failed to invest upstream in housing stability. The vast majority of our clients are not originally from Hartford, and yet Hartford is the only place where they can find shelter. Warming shelters like ours are meant to be temporary. They are meant to be a bridge, not a destination. And yet we see the same people night after night because there is frankly nowhere else for them to go. The demand far exceeds the number of beds that we have to provide. This year in particular, we've seen a significant increase in elderly and disabled guests. Many people who are seniors living on fixed Social Security incomes who simply cannot keep up with pace of rising rents. The gap between what they receive each month and the cost of housing has become impossible to bridge, and so they show up at our shelter. Warming centers like ours have become places where consequences of policy choices show up in cold, injured bodies. Isaiah 58 teaches us that true worship is to loose the bonds of injustice. If we are serious about being a just society, we must move beyond emergency response and address the root causes that place people in our building night after night instead of permanent homes. Allowing faith communities that are already doing the work and willing to do more the autonomy to utilize their land and facilities to assist individuals who are unhoused or housing insecure is not radical. It is faithful stewardship. Micah 6:8 tells us that the Lord requires us to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with God. Passing YIGB and voting in support of HB 5396 is an opportunity for us to do justice, to create a pathway that makes it possible for faith communities to be part of the solution that we desperately need in our state. I urge you to pass YIGB and to vote in support of HB 5396. Let us be a state where our laws reflect our highest values, and where our faith communities are empowered to build not just shelters for the night, but homes that will last people a lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the work that your
Thank you.
church does, because without that additional cold weather shelter, we know how many people would be outside and how many are still outside because we do not have adequate shelter for folks right now. I guess my question is, we heard from CCEH some of the reasoning behind, when people come in and they say, this is how I lost my house, or this is why I am unhoused. What are the things that you hear from folks? Is it around the same lines of affordability?
It's really about affordability. It's folks who are on fixed incomes. I mean, there's a whole wide array of things that we see, but the thing that's come up again and again this year is just the cost of living is not keeping pace with the aid that they are receiving. So Social Security, and it's a lot of elderly and disabled people that we're seeing this year.
Yeah, those are probably the two most concerning populations for me. Any questions? Seeing none at this time. Thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you.
And I hope we all have regular school days soon, because we're feeling it
Thank
too.
you. That's great.
The mom group I'm on, we're very upset. Up next, we're going back to number 4, Sean Gio, please. Thank you so much.
Sorry for the delay. I need these, and I apologize for missing my first.
It's okay. It was very icy out there. People were slow to get in.
Good afternoon, Senator Rahman, Representative Cabros-Degraw, excuse me, Senator Gordon, Representative Haynes, and members of the committee. I'm Sean Gio. I'm Policy Director at Partnership of Strong Communities. We're a statewide affordable housing research and advocacy organization. And I'm here to testify in strong support of HB 5396. As you all know, Connecticut continues to face a significant housing shortage, and we've heard how many seniors, essential workers, young adults are struggling to find homes they can afford in the communities where they work, worship, or grew up. We need more affordable housing options, and we need them in places with good schools, access to jobs, and reliable transportation. This bill offers a thoughtful, targeted way to expand that supply. Many congregations want to help address housing instability in the same way they respond to our other community needs, just as you heard, and I'm sure you'll hear quite a bit more, I hope, by feeding families, running warming centers, offering childcare and after-school programs. But even when they have suitable land, our outdated zoning rules and lengthy approval processes often make housing development nearly impossible. YIGB removes some of these barriers while keeping safeguards in place. The bill excludes flood-prone property, cemetery land, parcels without adequate water or sewer, sites near hazardous facilities, so on. And every development would need to comply with the same building, fire codes, ADA, accessibility requirements, fair housing laws, environmental regulations, etc. These are practical, responsible guardrails. And it's also important to note that while religious institutions are typically tax exempt, the housing built under this bill would not be. These homes will increase local housing options and broaden the tax base. Even a small number of YIGB developments could produce hundreds of deeply affordable homes over time. These are the types of homes, precisely the types of homes that we need most in this critical housing shortage, homes that remain affordable for decades and provide real stability for families. Connecticut's already taken steps to modernize its housing laws, particularly in the last special session. This bill complements those efforts by enabling mission-driven institutions to be partners in this work. It aligns our policies with the values that many faith communities already live out every day: service, compassion, commitment to their neighbors. For these reasons, I urge you to support and advance HB 5396. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. And excellent point about increasing the tax base, because we know that our towns are struggling. A lot have gone through revals and lost a lot of money with commercial revaluation because of the commercial not coming back after the pandemic. So certainly that is a benefit to this bill as well. Any questions from the panel? Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Thank you for your testimony. I have a question about the percentage required of affordable units. So a lot of the developments that I've seen in New Haven that take advantage of the 4% low-income housing tax credit can only do 20% of units at 60% AMI. I saw in the bill the proposed language is 30%. I'm wondering if you think that might make it challenging even for a congregation that says, yes, in God's backyard, and then they run into, okay, well, how do we actually finance that? Do you think we would see more of these developments built if the legislation passes and that threshold is a little lower?
That the second part of your question, yes, I think. The first part of the question is difficult to say, but I think it's true that 30% set aside at 60% of the area median income, that's significant and would make it challenging for a lot of developments to work financially. It's definitely a case-by-case, site-by-site issue. And affordable housing generally is very complicated to make the finances work. So if it was seen to be, an additional barrier, is going to make it that much more difficult to be able to finance these deals. So I think it's a warranted concern.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I know that if Rafi were here, he would say 30%, 30%, 30%, but thank you.
But he is.
He's not, is he?
In fact, here.
Okay. Always looking over our shoulder. Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Actually, Senator Gordon, go ahead.
Thank you for testifying today. And I'm going to get into the weeds because, as you know, land use and land use regulation does get into a lot of what some people may find dry and boring issues and details, but they're extremely important when we talk about zoning, which originally emanated from the federal government in the 20s, has three major, just not all-inclusive, responsibilities. And I can tell you towns take that very, very seriously. I think all municipalities do. One is upholding public safety, others upholding public welfare, the others upholding public health. There's other things such as environmental concerns, things like that. My understanding is you're in support of this legislation and the intent of the legislation. I'm just interested in what your comments are relative to some of the real details of this bill, which talks about using summary review, which is built into state statute and is basically as of right. It's not really a review in the true sense of the word, but also some things in here that talk about not allowing certain conditions that do exist in certain towns, zoning regulations such as height restrictions, things like that. I'm just interested in how your views are relative to using a summary review where different parcels are not the same, different parts of the town are not the same. For example, a town may have an aquifer protection because it has no public water and has to protect water bodies, river courses, wetlands, things like that. But also, in a sense, some of this warning seems to say certain restrictions that have been put into place to uphold public health, for example, could then be, in a sense, not applicable. And I'm not saying anything about the intent of trying to do housing with religious organizations. I'm just interested in the nuts and bolts of a decision process.
First, I'm not sure where in this bill, which I'm testifying in support of, but it's not it's a bill I support rather than one that I've been involved with crafting. And I'd say that I'm not sure where you see public health at risk. I think this, any developments built on this, I think it's actually expressed, even though it probably doesn't need to be expressly stated in the bill, that we need to conform to all health and safety codes and environmental laws apply, et cetera. But just your first, the part of your statement regarding summary review as not a review, I think it is in fact a review. It's a review of whether the application conforms to the underlying regulations, and the same review that single-family homes go through now, or similar. And I would also say that we're in a housing crisis that's lasted for a long time, and it's grown only more severe, as we just heard from the Reverend before. The folks she sees every day are a direct result of a lot of factors, and one of those is town's refusal to allow housing. And we need to do things differently. We have not done things differently. Section 830G was created more than 36 years ago, in part because many towns refused to allow more affordable homes in their communities, Senator Gordon. And I think we've seen towns continue to refuse that despite that. Section 830G is not enough to solve the problem. This is a very proactive step, allowing communities that want to provide affordable homes to folks in their community. And I think it's an excellent step that I hope the General Assembly passes this year.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments. I would just take exception to a statement that says towns are refusing. Please come out to the 13 towns I represent. You'll see they're not refusing at all. And I welcome you. I'm happy to host you to show you that. But I would just say that if you look at certain parts of what's in this bill, for example, lines 18 plus, you'll see some of the nuts and bolts concerns that I have relative, and a summary review for single family is very different for subdivisions or multifamily. They're very different things. And that's well known in land use. So happy to have more discussions with you, but I do look at the details, how bills would operate and what towns can and cannot do to uphold their responsibility. Nothing about trying to help with housing affordability, which is the real term that I use to help people even in the middle class who struggle financially. So more than happy to have further discussions, but I think we have to be very careful about some of the nuts and bolts and the details of what works and what doesn't work with regards to land use decisions and land use in general. So I think one can try to come to common ground, but I think we just need to keep that uppermost in mind. If we want to have a law that's going to reach its intended purpose, we want to make certain that in the real world it can operate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I welcome common ground, and after a very long time of working in affordable housing, I'm not sure where we can find it. And I think this is a very practical bill. I hope you'll consider carefully.
Thank you. And I would say and remind everyone again that we did, as you mentioned, we passed this in affordable housing on religious property and transit districts as part of 8002. So while we haven't yet seen anybody start it that we know of, we certainly look forward to that, and hopefully we'll see more of it. Any other questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank
Okay, we are getting back to our original back on track list because I'm not seeing anyone else that had missed earlier. So number 9, Laura Brown. I do not see her on. Oh, there you are. Wonderful. When you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
You
Yeah.
sure can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Good morning, members of the Planning and Development Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning. My name is Laura Brown, and I'm the Executive Director of the City of New Haven Planning Department. Our department, including the Deputy Director of Zoning, works closely with our building official who serves as our zoning enforcement officer in implementing our zoning regulations and our zoning enforcement program. And I'm writing and testifying today in support of HB 5391, an act concerning the enforcement of zoning regulations. In 2025, the City of New Haven created a working group, including City of New Haven alders and staff, to explore how to increase the effectiveness of our zoning enforcement program by imposing fines for zoning violations. Issuing fines for zoning violations is an effective tool to increase compliance and protect quality of life in our neighborhoods. I'll note that that is the stick part of the program, but we also have worked hard to implement the carrot part of the program too, which is more proactive. We had hoped that implementing this would involve a relatively simple modification to the zoning ordinance. However, we're asking for your assistance today to allow us to implement these changes through a change to the Connecticut general statutes that will enable municipalities like New Haven to implement zoning fines. The City of New Haven is one of many communities in the state that, as you know, does not derive zoning authority from the Connecticut general statutes, Chapter 124 zoning, Section 8-2, but from the special acts, including the Special Act of 1925. In reviewing the regulatory authority to implement zoning fines, we discovered that our authority is limited by the Special Act of 1925. And in particular, that act states, Section 9, any such person who, having been served with an order to discontinue any such violation, shall fail to comply with such order within 10 days after such service, or shall continue to violate any provision of the regulations made under authority of the provisions of the act specified in such order, shall be subject to a civil penalty of $250 payable to the treasurer of the City of New Haven. A $250 cap on civil fines for zoning regulations would be ineffective. Given the inflation of the value of the dollar since 1925, the value of this fine today would be about $4,600. A fine of $250 is roughly equivalent to what we typically charge for processing a permit application, which many bad actors would be very happy to pay to subvert our zoning regulations. Municipalities require legislative tools to improve our communities. Authorizing the special act to attain the powers afforded to other communities under Connecticut General Statutes 8-2 and 8-12A will put New Haven and other special act communities on equal footing for zoning enforcement. While zoning is not a solution to all of our civil issues, it plays an important role in how our neighborhoods, buildings, and open spaces are designed, built, and how we experience them as residents. This bill will benefit the residents of urban communities across the state who seek support from their local government in enforcing enacted zoning regulations. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I strongly encourage your support.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Representative Winter has some questions for you.
Good morning. Thank you for your testimony. Just to clarify for the committee, so New Haven derives its zoning powers through this special act. And because of that, then I've got the special act up here on my computer, and it's on this ancient paper from 1925. But because of that, we're limited by the cap on the amount that can be fined from this 101-year-old special act. And you're looking for language that would allow the City of New Haven to be able to enforce its zoning laws with the same penalties that other municipalities are afforded.
That's correct.
That's really helpful. And I can say I've definitely seen this challenge for the city. So I think of this one property on Thompson Street in my neighborhood where for years they've been running an illegal auto repair business. And there are tow trucks parked out on the street and tons of cars in the yard. And I think it's been challenging for the city because we're hamstrung in our ability to push someone who's clearly flouting the law. So I think this will be really helpful for the city, whether it's a small issue like that or larger issues like the salt storage issue that I know has come up near the port area. So I really appreciate you raising this and bringing it to the committee's attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you both so much. Seeing no other questions at this time, thanks for being with us. Have a pleasant afternoon.
Thank you.
Up next, number 10, remotely, Jennifer Paredes from Bethel Center. When you're ready.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I think so, right? It's wonderful to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak in support of HB 5396. I serve as the executive director of the Bethel Center in Milford, Connecticut. We serve 13 municipalities from Milford to Guilford, Madison, as well as the lower Naugatuck Valley area. And really here today just to stand alongside colleagues in the work of responding to the housing crisis, the housing emergency that's happening in our communities. The Bethel Center is an organization that was created in an interfaith alliance. 45 years ago, we were called the Combined Parish Action Committee. Bethel Center means House of God in Hebrew. And so we are the product of leaders in our communities responding to, at that time, a crisis that was at all of our front doors in our communities and remains there today around homelessness. And quite frankly, this bill gives the vision and the roadmap for those same faith communities to respond to the emergency and the crisis that is at our doors and in our communities today. In addition to direct services, the Bethel Center offers support to the 13 municipalities to ensure that they have the resources, information, and roadmap to responding to homelessness. And of course, the emergency of today is in homeless response is direct services, but housing ends homelessness. And quite frankly, I can't tell you how many communities, the response is consistently led by faith leaders. And two, every community that we're a part of, they want to do more. They want to do more, and they need help. They need a roadmap. They need support. And this bill, as colleagues have spoken from CCH and faith leaders have spoken, allows that ground to start that conversation and work forward. I think what I'll say is the faith communities have consistently been leaders in responding to crisis, but I also think that they represent and community development done right. They have long-standing, deep relationships in our communities. They have their finger on the pulse, if you will, on what the housing needs are in communities, what the tolerance of housing needs are in communities, and we need to empower them. We need to empower them. We need to work alongside them, and this is the way to do that. So, just really want to provide my support as an organization that is the product of what faith communities can do when given the tools to lead. We talked a little bit about what homelessness looks like today. And really, we have to build a roadmap for the future here. So just in support, and thank you also very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony and certainly for all the work that you are doing to keep our neighbors housed. And I know that Hamden has been particularly hit hard. And so we really do appreciate you being here. Any questions on this one? I don't seeing none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you again soon, I hope. Up next, Zach McEwen from CCM. I'm not seeing him in the room or online. Number 12, Reverend Ellis Miller, please, from Granby Congregational Church. If you could just turn your microphone on. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Good morning. Thank you, members of the Planning and Development Committee, for hearing my testimony today. I am Reverend Ellis Miller. I'm a resident of Granby and the pastor of Granby Congregational Church, and our congregation is a member of Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance. I'm testifying in support of HB 5396, an act concerning affordable housing development on certain land owned by a religious organization. Granby is deeply impacted by the housing crisis. When our seniors want to downsize their homes, they have to leave town to do so and lose ties with their community. Our school population is shrinking because young working families are priced out of our competitive housing market.
Our church has a resource that would chip away at the housing shortage in Granby. We have 5.9 undeveloped acres in the center of town. It's walkable to grocery stores and restaurants. It's connected to public sewer and water, which is rare for Granby. And it's right on the commuter bus line that takes you to Hartford, which is an express route that is too small to qualify under Bill 8002. For 30 years, we have held onto this property, and we believe it is time to turn our field of dreams into a dream come true. Affordable housing is something our congregation is passionate about, but as a volunteer organization, we are overwhelmed by the roadblocks to making it happen. We have the resources and the desire. We need your help in making the process more streamlined and accessible. We are a community church that wants our community to thrive. We care deeply about our neighbors. We want to build something that is meaningful to our whole town and preserves the charms of Granby and opens up our beloved town to more people. So we have the land, we have the heart, and we need a simple process. If HB 5396 became law, it would help us take the bold steps forward to transform our field of dreams into affordable housing. It would allow us to serve God by helping ensure that our beloved town is accessible and affordable for generations to come. So I'd urge you to pass YIGB and to vote in support of HB 5396. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your testimony. Could you elaborate a little bit on some of the roadblocks that you have seen within your town?
Yeah, some of the setbacks and density for housing density in the zone, we're in a city center adjacent zone, would not make any development accessible for us. Like, we're not talking about anything that would be health and safety or look any different than the rest of our neighbors, but you're not allowed to, like, the amount of land you need to build houses doesn't make sense for what an affordable housing unit would look like in our town. So.
No, and I know you mentioned the sewer as well, and I know that Granby in the past has had some sewer challenges when it comes to building different types of housing other than single family. So that's makes sense that you would put it where there's already some density and the services that you need in order to build. I think Representative Haynes has a question for you as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do have a question, but she took one. So I appreciate hearing about some of the obstacles. And what I'm interested in is, because you have the land and you say you have the resources, do you actually have a plan that's already been drafted in some way? And have you talked to your zoning people? Like, what is the plan that you're actually trying to put in? Is it 2-family, 3-family? Is it an apartment house? Tell us a little bit more about your plan.
So we're actively in the exploration stage. We have actually one of our church members is a member of planning and zoning on town who's active on our team. This week we sent out a request for qualifications to architects and engineers. If you know any who are interested in affordable housing, send them to us. And so we're very much in the exploratory stage. And and we've talked with our city manager, who's phenomenal, about some of the roadblocks that might be ahead for us, or just some of the hurdles that we would have to do. The town is supportive of it, but it's also sort of in keeping in line with their other with all of the qualifications. It would make it near impossible. So we're actively exploring it, but this would really help us move forward on that.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, my zoning czar just left the room, so I can't ask him like what are the limitations, but and I don't know, maybe Tammy might know because this is her district. Oh, it's not Granby, it's East Granby. I keep doing that to you. I'm sorry. Anyway, how many units are you trying to put in?
We're not that far along.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. We're in an area where it can only be single family homes, though.
So you don't have any multi-family?
No.
In the center of Granby
zone.
there? Yeah. Okay. Okay. From what I know, and I didn't get into a lot of zoning stuff when I was a municipal leader, I left that to my zoning board. But I do know that there was always special exceptions. So I'm assuming that, through your, exploration, you might be able to get somewhere, because I think it's phenomenal. I think when you have 5 acres and you have, there's property readily available in that kind of situation, then we should help and we should do what we can.
Yeah.
I think every situation is very different, and you're the first person that has come up here and actually explained a little bit more of the situation. And it sounds like we should be able to do something for you. So
yeah,
keep me posted.
Thank you. And in reviewing the bill, when I did, what I liked about was that it was broad enough that still it would be different for different towns. It wouldn't create some uniform affordable housing solution per town, but it would still speak to each area's needs. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm not seeing any other questions at this time, but I would say look back at 8002 because you're actually a transit adjacent community. And I know that because I spent so much time writing that bill.
Okay.
So you do actually qualify.
So I understand the
I'm
way
pretty
that
sure.
I read it, that you had to have during peak hours service at least once an hour. We only have it every 90 minutes to 2 hours
Yeah,
during
that's
peak
still,
hours.
you're still good.
Okay,
So,
awesome.
I know it's those bills are not easy to read. And I think 60 plus pages of it was just the first time home buyer tax credit. So skip all that and go to the section on work, live, ride.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Up next, we have number 13, Dan Panitz, which I think his testimony is being read by Jackie Seawright. Thank you so much. Jackie, nice to see you.
Same here. Good morning. Thank you, co-chairs and the members of the Planning Development Committee. I'm Jackie Seawright with Congregations Organized for a New Connecticut, here on behalf of Dan Panitz of Stewardship Realty, which is a mission-driven real estate firm providing development services exclusively to faith-based organizations. And he shares, in our experience, zoning designations in many municipalities, including those in Connecticut, have restricted affordable housing in low-density areas, resulting in housing shortages and unaffordable rentals. While zoning designations have created housing scarcity in many areas of Connecticut, Bill 5396 will allow religious institutions and developments partners to bypass local restrictions in municipalities where housing is not available but also affordable. Stewardship Realty supports Connecticut House Bill 5396, which aims to advance the mission of many religious organizations and address the state's housing crisis by allowing them to develop affordable housing on their land through a streamlined, expedited process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I actually wish he was here because I have some questions, but I will locate him after the fact because I've not heard about development services specifically for faith-based work. So I'd be excited to talk to him. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you so much, Jackie. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, number 14, Lauren Tagliatella, CTAA.
Hi, good morning. This is my first time testifying in front of P&D, so thank you for having me.
Welcome, and we can hear you just fine.
Perfect. My name is Lauren Tagliatella, and I'm a member and a volunteer at the Connecticut Apartment Association, which represents over 72,000 professionally managed apartment homes. I was also born into a family of developers, and we've been building housing for the past 109 years. I'm here today in support of House Bill 5396. Connecticut has a housing supply problem. We are not producing enough homes to meet the demand, particularly in the affordable space. And that shortage is driving up costs, limiting workforce mobility, and making it harder for families to remain in the communities where they work. HB 5396 is a practical solution. It allows affordable housing development on land owned by religious organizations to move through a streamlined summary review process. Many religious institutions across the state have underutilized land, extra parking, side lots, or vacant parcels, and a genuine desire to support housing as part of their mission. The challenge is not willingness, the challenge is process. The traditional zoning pathway can be lengthy and unpredictable as well as costly. For affordable housing projects operating within strict financing deadlines, delays can mean losing funding altogether. When that happens, projects don't just get delayed, they die. This bill does not remove oversight. It preserves health, safety, and environmental standards. What it does is reduce procedural uncertainty and lower development risk, which directly improves feasibility and increases the likelihood that this project will get built. What's nice about these sites is they're really well located. They're near transit, schools, services, which makes them appropriate places for thoughtfully designed housing. HB 5396 leverages privately owned land and mission-driven institutions to help address a statewide problem without requiring new state land acquisition. We must remove unnecessary barriers where it makes sense, and this bill does that. I respectfully urge you to support HB 5396. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And that was fascinating to hear how long your family has been building.
We've been around a while.
Yeah, as a developer, I mean, I guess what would you see in terms of, we're hearing about what the barriers might be for folks when they're building. So what, I guess if you could talk a little bit more about how this just frees up the ability to actually get to building.
So really the time is what drives up the unaffordability factor. So when we were building our latest community, it's 393 units and 20% affordable there. It took time for the neighborhood to want it. So, a lot of the neighbors did not want us there. The town thought we needed to do a traffic study, which is also very costly and takes time to arrange and make that happen. They thought we needed to add a stoplight because we were going to be increasing traffic. Well, none of that we never actually needed to put in a traffic light. There was one close by. The neighbors didn't want it because they were worried about the school district, that we would put too many kids in the school system. So, those are pretty typical issues. You have a lot of NIMBY folks who don't see the benefit of adding huge taxpayers to their community. But we've actually had pretty decent luck with the town of Hamden. We mostly are in greater New Haven area. We were able to change a zone, get more density. We've been very lucky. But as a member of the Connecticut Apartment Association, we have members that have taken 10 years to get a shovel in the ground. So that's obviously concerning. And we think initiatives like this, they will help make a dent in our huge housing supply crisis.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Representative Haynes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here, Lauren. In regards to the one that you were particularly just talking about, the 393 units, I guess my question or my concern is that when you take 393 units and put it into a city or a town or a small town, there would be some concerns from neighbors, from school systems, from traffic. I was a municipal leader of a very small town, about 10,000 people maybe, and they were concerned about us putting something down by the East Haddam Swing Bridge because they were concerned about traffic. And there's 10,000 cars that go over that bridge every day. So I would think that and I guess this is the issue here it's one thing if you're putting in 6 apartments in a small town, maybe such as Granby, or even 12 apartments in on a bus line. But when you're talking about 393 units, that is going to be a sizable expense on the town. Public safety, schools, everything. So I think there's got to be maybe a happy medium here as to what we can do. We can't simply say any density is fine and we should just let that go through. There has to be a certain amount, and this is why the local control is so important. So this as of right, putting in even on private land, such as a church or such as religious organization of some kind, when you're talking about high density apartments or high density housing, as much as we need it, it also has to be able to be sustained by the town or by the city. So I think, we have to be reasonable about it. And when there's a situation like this, I can understand why it takes a while for a town to accept this. So I guess, I don't know whether you want to speak to that or you don't have to speak to it, but it's definitely a concern when you're talking about that high density.
So for Hamden's hungry for development. We just there's such a demand. So we haven't built anything for religious institutions before. We're a family-owned business. We build, own, and operate our own properties. Certainly the project has to make sense for the town. The infrastructure needs to be there. The desire for affordable housing needs to be there in buy-in from the community too. When you talk about schools, though, I have to push back on that a little bit, just because the apartments that are being built now are much smaller than what were being built in the 60s and 70s, which we were also building then as well. It's just so costly to build apartments that you'll find that like a 2-bedroom, you can have a 2-bedroom that's 900 square feet or 1,000 square feet. A lot of larger families, it's too small for them to live in. So when people complain about adding students to the school system, it's a very small percentage of our communities that actually have kids. I would say it's like a handful, like at the apartment property with 393 units, I would say it's probably between 10 apartments there that have kids. It's mostly working professionals and some retirees. But in general, people will stay there when they're babies and then move out to a house, something larger to meet the needs as their families grow.
Okay, well, thank you for those comments. I guess one last question, just because you brought this up, in regards to the density of, which areas can take it, which areas can't. Do you have any recommendations as a developer who's been doing this for over 100 years, as to is there some kind of limitations that can be built into legislation to say, in this particular area or this particular population, like what is it that we could put some limits on this so that, again, a 393 unit goes in the right place?
I would like to get back to you on that. I would like to talk to my committee and offer some suggestions if that's okay.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Always open to suggestion. That's why we do these hearings. Any other questions? Seeing none at this time. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon.
You too.
Up next, number 15, Susan Ray from Connect United Church on the Green, New Haven. Welcome, Susan. Just remember to turn the microphone on.
Good afternoon to the distinguished members of the Planning and Development Committee. My name is Susan Ray. I'm a resident of New Haven, Connecticut, and a member of United Church of the Green of the United Church of Christ. I'm also a member of Connect and a member of the housing team, co-lead. I'm here today to speak on behalf of Bill number HB 5396 in support. I am hoping that we can support our sister faith communities to develop projects that address the housing shortage here in Connecticut. Our church is located directly on the New Haven Green, and we frequently have members and guests who are struggling with homelessness. Many of these folks are working, but have no permanent housing. They are staying in shelters, sleeping in their cars, surfing from couch to couch. Sometimes they need a safe place to leave their belongings, or they need funds for an overnight stay, for dignity, warmth, safety, and a good night's sleep. We are helping the unhoused by providing nourishment, clothing, assistance, and prayer. But that's not enough. We are just a part of a fragile safety net. We realize that solutions to solve the problems of the unhoused must be a multi-pronged approach. We support this legislation, which we refer to as Yes in God's Backyards, or YIGBY, so that our sister religious communities that have the land and the desire to fulfill their mission of assisting those that need affordable housing can do so. We want to support this bill and hope you will too.
Thank you so much. And I like how you referred to the unhoused folks as guests. I think that's an important thing. But guests are meant to leave, and they can't leave unless they have housing. So thank you so much. Any questions? Representative Dubetsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for coming in. I very much appreciate it. So you are speaking on behalf of a religious organization?
Yes, United Church on the Green in New Haven and Connect.
Okay. And so is it your understanding that this bill would allow your organization to build low-income housing on its property?
Well, our property right now, we don't have we are on the green, but we don't have land to build affordable housing. However, we want to support those sister religious organizations that do. Perhaps we could partner, but we want to support more affordable housing. We see the need every Sunday in our church when we have people coming in that are desperate and need housing, need food, need a place to build their lives. And sleeping in a car is not a solution for that.
So if your organization had the resources, you could purchase land somewhere else and build housing?
Yes.
Okay. But I, for example, am not a religious organization. So in the same situation, I would not be able to, under this bill, be able to build the same thing that you would be able to build. Is that right?
Well, aren't there other opportunities for you to pursue affordable housing, like the TOD legislation that we have? I mean, there are other ways to help this housing crisis. We're just trying to be part of a multi-pronged approach to help housing.
Right. The point I'm getting to is that if this bill allows you to do something because of your religious affiliation that it doesn't allow me to do because I don't have a religious affiliation, isn't that a violation of the Constitution?
I don't see that. I see that we're trying to help people in need. And I see that our organizations are working together to do that. Why don't you join us?
Well, perhaps I would, but under the Constitution, should I be forced to join a religious organization that I would not otherwise be affiliated with in order to participate in helping build affordable housing?
No, you should not be forced to do that. However, again, I want to emphasize that this is just one of many approaches to help affordable housing in this state. And we know that it is very well needed in this state. And that's why I'm sitting here to support it, to support this bill.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your desire to help in this field. However, this particular bill, I do not think would survive constitutional muster. But I very much appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
To the point of the good representative's concerns, this bill has actually passed in other states. It's generally considered constitutional because states have that local authority, that local land use. Federal law certainly protects religious lands under RLUPA. It's not preventing anyone else from engaging in affordable housing. If you wanted to engage in building, a single family home, 91% of our state is zoned for single family homes. You certainly could do that if you wanted to make those affordable. So I don't actually think that this will receive the constitutional challenge that the good representative is concerned about. But I'm always happy to hear the good back and forth amongst people. Are there any other questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you so much for being here. Have a pleasant afternoon. Number 16, Mari Flicker from Connect, please. Mari, are you with us? I believe I see you online.
Yes. Hi. My name is Perry
Eric,
Montrose.
yes, you're reading Mari's testimony. Okay, great.
I am.
Thank you.
So my name is Mari Flicker, and I am a lifelong resident of Fairfield, a friend of First Church Congregational in Fairfield, and a member of Connect. I am testifying in support of expanding affordable housing in Connecticut through HB 5396 YIGBY. As an advocate and a former trustee of a special needs trust, I personally help disabled individuals find safe and affordable housing. I understand firsthand the challenge of finding housing in Connecticut. Having spent countless hours looking for available affordable housing, it took me over a year to find a one-bedroom apartment for a disabled individual. Once I was able to find the housing, I was required to sign as a guarantor on the lease to secure this below-market rental unit for this individual who was on Social Security disability insurance. Even after this individual received a Section 8 housing voucher in addition to his SSDI, the management company would not allow me to be removed from the lease as a guarantor. With monthly SSDI and a Section 8 voucher, this individual should have readily qualified for this BMR without the requirement of a guarantor. This is an example of the untenable hurdles people seeking affordable housing in Connecticut encounter. I urge you to pass YIGBY and to vote in support of HB 5396. Affordable housing is needed, so please create a pathway that makes it possible for faith institutions to contribute to the solution. I'll add that I personally am in the unique position of being a landlord, having the experience of rehabbing a foreclosed house for investment, and working for a faith community that purchased property to house those in need. So in having all of that experience, as a landlord, I've certainly seen what's happening with affordable housing and the inordinate number of applicants when I have a vacancy. So it happens I own some units that were built by the Tagliatellas. Lauren just testified. And my wife works in homeless services, and the rent hikes we've seen, I mean, what we price you would pay for a one-bedroom apartment just a few years ago does not even get you a room in a boarding house right now. The congregation where I work, it's a Unitarian Universalist congregation. I'm the director of faith formation. Years ago, we purchased a neighboring property and used the 2 apartments as housing for those in need. We keep this property on the tax roll, as it would be stated in the bill, so it does not negatively affect the city budget. We charge minimal rent, enough to cover costs, so families are able to get back on their feet and save money for a future security deposit or down payment. And we actually put aside part of the rent to be given back to them when they leave. In this way, we empower them to be in a better financial position and help multiple families over time, because they can eventually move on. So faith communities can make a significant positive impact on the affordable housing crisis if they're allowed to cost effectively build on their property with the mission of helping those most vulnerable in the crisis. I'd like to add, I mean, I could speak more to the 30% and the feasibility from my experience. One of the things in this bill is with faith communities, you're not talking about developers who are trying to make a significant profit. You're talking about organizations, nonprofits, who are interested in helping people and don't want to make a profit, but want to provide housing. So that totally changes feasibility. But it is time, as we heard previously, time is money. And, you know, bridge loans, loans for building, all of those, rehab loans are expensive. And so time is the key. So if you have summary review, streamline the process, not to avoid code, it all still, code is still enforced, but to take out some of the subjectivity in the process. I've dealt with towns where, and I have colleagues in the building industry where it's like, depending on the town, it's the particularities of the building official that determines how long it's going to take. And I had a town that it took 6 months to get a building permit, just because of what was going on in the building department. So I think if you can help faith communities avoid all of those issues with this process, then you're creating the feasibility to create affordable housing in some great ways.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and fascinating to hear sort of the landlord perspective too, because we have not entirely heard that today. So that's very useful to us. Any questions? Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for coming in to testify. I agree. The perspective of a landlord who is interested in seeing housing that is affordable is very informative to me, at least. Let me ask you, the properties that you rent for a fairly low rent. If you wouldn't mind, what kind of units are those, and what is the rents? If it's not,
Sure. And 2 different things, the units that are rented by the congregation I work for versus the units that I rent myself. The congregation charges just enough rent to cover their costs. It's a 2-family home with an upstairs apartment, downstairs apartment. I believe, I'm trying to remember the number of bedrooms. It's something like maybe a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom. They're not large units.
In what town?
in New London.
Okay.
The units I own personally, I charge a reasonable market rent. It's not especially low, but it's also not high. And just with those reasonable rents, I can't tell you how many applicants I get when a unit becomes vacant, and people sharing with me that they looked at other properties that were charging higher rent than I was, that were in disrepair, had no windows, and were smaller than the units that I was renting. So it's also there's not enough housing available, especially obviously affordable and reasonable. We see a lot of luxury apartments going up, but not something that, middle class or people who are on Social Security can afford at all.
Do you consider any of those units, whether it's the church-owned units or the units that you own, do you consider any of them to be affordable housing units?
Certainly the ones the church owns are affordable housing units. I would say mine are somewhere in the middle, like they're somewhat affordable, but I would not call them affordable housing. Although, particular cases, I helped a family that was homeless, living in a hotel, and the town vouched for them, and I gave them a lower rent than what I was going to charge at market rate, and have still maintained that lower rent for them. They've been there a few years now. So obviously, I'm a landlord that's cared for my tenants. So it's different than, in New London, we have some out-of-town absentee landlords who are just interested in collecting money. I saw one case, a neighboring building, where the landlord kicked out a disabled woman because he could get $300 more a month from a drug dealer who he moved in. Just crazy situations where we're not, it's trying to extract the most money for profit, but not meeting the needs of the community and the people. And there's many facets to this.
Have you or the church placed deed restrictions on those units?
I'm not sure exactly what you're meaning, but I don't think we placed actual restrictions. I mean, the restrictions are in our mission, and the way we defined how the property is going to be used.
Right. So the units that you own and the units that the church owns, you are renting them at a reasonable rate, which is generally affordable to people, but it does not, none of them have deed restrictions on them mandating that for the next 40 years, you must rent those apartments at a certain level.
No, and I would say that the church is, they're charging $800 for an apartment that on the market rate might be $1,800 or $2,000. So, it's even lower than affordable housing would be. But that's the mission of the faith community, which is a big part of this in this bill, is the advantage of enabling faith communities to do this work is that their specific interest is in helping the crisis, helping people, and not making a profit.
Right, but they're not required to. They're not deed restricted. They wouldn't be legally required to rent at a certain level. They could change it if they decided to.
They could. I think when you create that, you don't want to create a situation where, faith communities are all different, and I don't know what the exact situation would be, but you don't want a situation where you're allowing faith communities to then go into the business of luxury development and making profits. The idea is that they built on this land, that the intention was to create affordable housing. You don't want it to later become let's hike up the rents, whether let's say the congregation needs to sell the property later for financial reasons, or, I can't speak for every faith community's values, although certainly the interfaith communities I'm in, this is the concern and the intention. I'm imagining that deed is going to help keep the intention going, no matter what the circumstances.
How about your own units? You didn't put a deed restriction on the units that you own.
No, and honestly, I'm in the minority of landlords who, and again, I am making a small profit. It's not as low as it would be if my units currently were owned by a faith community. If I gave my units to the church, they would probably be charging a lot less rent than I am, but I'm also not raising my rents to the top market rates that we're seeing now. No, but I'm in the minority of landlords who, in part, of course, because, my life's work is in the faith community, and this is sort of a second career job for me, but my principles are in doing what I can for people, while having the investment.
If the church had, you talked about the church having financial troubles, or perhaps, in the future having financial troubles and having to sell. If they sold to a Satanist cult, and the Satanist cult decided to put in a compound of Satanists, would that be something that would be appropriate in the community where it sits?
Well, this is kind of a far-fetched scenario. I do think faith communities are conscientious many times about who they're selling their property to. I don't know that, we're talking about affordable housing, right? We're talking about units for individuals and families who are looking for a place to live, not some enterprise that would be, moving into the property.
Well, an enterprise is a religious organization, just like the one that's there now, right?
Right, but in this case, it's not building additional buildings for the congregational use, which is a different category. This is about building affordable housing for the community through an entity that has the concern and potential ability to do that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just to clarify, honestly, I think that we don't have a ton of Satan worshipers here in Connecticut, but they believe in not the actual like heaven and hell kind of Satan. It's more along the lines of the literary figure. They're actually non-theistic, so I'm not sure how that really feeds into all of this, but certainly if they were a registered religion, I would imagine they would have the right to do this. And I think we welcome anyone who's willing to provide affordable housing, especially to get some of our unhoused folks off of the streets. Let me see if there are any other questions for you at this time. Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Number 17, Peter Benner. I believe he's joining us in person. Just don't forget to turn on the microphone, please.
Yes, that's good. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Co-chairs Kavros DeGraw, Senator Rahman, ranking members Gordon and Haynes, and members of the committee. My name is Peter Benner. I'm a member of the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance and also of Westminster Presbyterian Church in West Hartford. I come here in both capacities, and I actually had some prepared testimony, which I'm going to deviate from because there has been so much said this morning that is compelling and powerful, and I think basically addresses the issue of churches with extra property coming together to help solve the housing crisis which we recognize is in such dire need. The lack of affordable housing is not a cause of poverty. It is what causes poverty. And we need, as a moral imperative within our faith organizations, to help address that. So we at Westminster, subsequent to the pandemic, which so affected so many churches within the state throughout the country, both from a financial and membership standpoint, because it depleted our ranks, we felt we had to address something that would help us reinvigorate our future work, our future mission, our future service to our neighbors. So we undertook a project of exploring affordable housing, which is ongoing right now. We have, thanks to a grant received from the Housing Ministries of New England, we've received a grant to retain a consultant and an architect who are in the process of giving us advice, of exploring opportunities, and really delving into what the possibilities are. In fact, we're having a meeting with them tonight to address those issues. One of the things we heard from our consultant early on, before this YIGBY opportunity came up, is, you know, it's going to take you 6, 7, 8 years before you can accomplish this. So think about that as a concern and a consideration before you really take the leap, because the time alone could defeat the process. We view this not, as so many of the speakers before me have said, not as a real estate venture, not as a profit-making venture, but as a mission to assist our neighbors, as is our calling, and as our church mission can be projected into the future. That's an exciting opportunity. And it's an opportunity that so many churches in this state.
Can you
take
please
advantage
summarize?
in order to address the housing issue that so many of us recognize needs to be addressed. So anyway, thank you for your time. And I appreciate the opportunity to be a little more extemporaneous than I anticipated.
Sometimes that's the best testimony. So thank you. Any questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thanks.
We
Thanks,
appreciate you
Jen.
being here. Up next, number 18, Daniel Moss from Connect. I believe the Reverend is going to read his testimony. You'll be tired by the time we get to you.
Now this will be me.
Okay.
Rabbi Moss texted me that he's not able to be on the Zoom. So dear co-chairs, Rep. Kavros-DeGraw and Senator Rahman, ranking members, Senator Gordon and Representative Haynes, and members of the Planning and Development Committee. My name is Rabbi Danny Moss. I serve as the rabbi of Temple Beth Tikva in Madison, Connecticut. I write as an ally of Connect. I'm testifying in strong support of expanding affordable housing in Connecticut through YIGBY, Yes in God's Backyard, and specifically in support of HB 5396. I support this bill because it aligns our state's land use policies with the fundamental moral values that underpin our faith traditions. A moral mandate. In the Jewish tradition, we are taught that the earth is not truly ours. We are merely its stewards. The Torah commands us 36 times to care for the vulnerable, and the Talmud teaches that a community must ensure its members have a place to dwell. At Temple Beth Tikva, our mission is rooted in Tikkun Olam, the duty to repair our world. Providing safe, dignified, and affordable housing is not a political act. It is a religious obligation to recognize the inherent dignity of every neighbor. Rabbi Moss uses a Hebrew term here that I will do my best with, Tselem Elohim. A pragmatic solution. This is also common sense policy. Many of our faith institutions possess underutilized land that we are eager to put to higher use. HB 5396 provides a streamlined summary review pathway that allows us to bypass the prohibitive costs and delays of traditional zoning red tape that often kills affordable housing projects before they begin. By passing this bill, you empower communities of faith to solve a public crisis using private resources. This issue is deeply personal in the Shoreline community. At Temple Beth Tikva, we have spent over 20 years partnering with Raise the Roof and Habitat for Humanity to build homes in the greater New Haven area and right here in Madison. We've seen firsthand how stable housing transforms lives. Stable housing transforms lives, giving families a foundation for health, education, and economic security. However, the current housing shortage is so dire that even our most dedicated volunteer efforts cannot keep pace. We see the impact on our seniors who wish to downsize but cannot find affordable options to stay in the town that they helped to build.
Can you please summarize?
Our young families want to raise their children here, but are priced out by a lack of diverse housing stock. Our workforce, teachers, first responders, service workers, forced to endure long commutes because they can't afford to live near where they work. We believe in religious freedom to activate our values by using privately owned land for the sacred purpose of housing our human family. I urge you to pass YIGBY, vote in support of HB 5396. Let us create a pathway that makes it possible for faith institutions and others of goodwill to be part of the solution. Sincerely, Rabbi Danny Moss.
Thank you very much. Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming in, Rabbi. I very much appreciate it. If this law permitted everybody except religious organizations to build affordable housing, would that be unconstitutional?
We would have to go back in time to when we first started establishing that religious organizations are in a unique category. That's already built into federal IRS regulations. It's built into state regulations. So if you are problematizing that, that's actually steps prior to what we're talking about now. So we are talking about, and our bill actually says, you know, it defines a religious organization. That's an organization that meets the religious purpose test of Section 501c3 of IRS Code of 1986. So it leans on first the state definition and then the IRS definition that the state points to. So if you're concerned that that in and of itself is problematic, that's a bigger fish to fry.
No, I'm saying that regardless of which definition you use, the organization's purpose is faith-based, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if this bill allowed a benefit to everybody in the state except religious organizations under any definition that you care to use, that would be unconstitutional, wouldn't it?
There are states that have actually done a YIGBY legislation that includes nonprofit organizations and educational institutions. I'd be very interested in that. We're really just looking to cut the pathway that is most reasonable and agreeable to a mixed group of legislators.
Right, but that's not what this bill does.
But you guys can add that if you want to.
So it would be unconstitutional to
No, I'm not saying
exclude
that because, as I said,
religious organizations.
enshrined in federal legislation and law is that religious organizations have some different treatment in the way we handle things.
Okay, so it's your feeling that that the legislature could pass a bill that allowed for landowners a certain benefit, but excluded any landowner that was a faith-based organization,
I think
that
a
would be
piece-
constitutional?
Piece for you to keep in mind is part of the reason this is a unique situation is because the property that the faith community owns is not taxed. And so these organizations are saying, you know what? Go ahead and tax this percentage of the property. I'm going to forego something that's already my right. And in that transaction, we're asking you to meet us halfway and make this more feasible for us, for a group of volunteer-led boards. So it's not really comparable to a private person who just wants to do this. They have to be foregoing a tax exemption, and they have to be showing that they're going to make a certain number, they're going to build a certain number of affordable units.
But
And they have to have owned the property for 3 years. And so there's a lot to it.
Okay, but a nonprofit organization that was not faith-based would get a different benefit than an organization that is faith-based.
If you do not choose to add nonprofits to this bill, which some states have, that is correct. But you have the option to add nonprofits to this bill.
Okay, so as written, it's unconstitutional.
No, it's not. As you know, as Representative Cavros-DeGrasse said, it's passed in several states. So you're trying to get me to say it's unconstitutional. I'm not able to do that.
I understand. I can say it.
Go for
because,
it.
And I know it is, whether
Yeah.
it's passed in other states or not, treating different organizations differently because one is faith-based and one is not is unconstitutional. Thank you for your testimony.
We disagree on that.
And
And
I think our LCO attorneys disagree on that as well, because they're not in the habit of having us, file unconstitutional bills. I would also say that I am more than happy to add nonprofits to this bill. I think that the more opportunities for affordable housing, the better. And I think all of the members on both sides of this circle know that. So if that's necessary, but I don't believe that it stands as unconstitutional. And I would say that carrying this all the way up to this specific Supreme Court, they are so generally organized around the principles of religious freedom, this specific court that sits right now, that I highly doubt that they would be opposed to this, because they would certainly not want to impinge on those religious freedoms, is my thought. But I did interrupt you, so feel free to
I wanted
finish.
to just share two things. One, I loved how Senator Gordon said this is a work in progress. We are sort of workshopping the concept and what makes sense. And so I just want to lift up that it makes a lot of sense to possibly add nonprofits. It also this body can add height guardrails, density guardrails. It's not currently in it, but the assumption is that that will be a part of the dynamic back and forth negotiation that happens in this building. So our understanding is that you are going to take this and make it, because of what you know and because of your own discernment, you're going to make it realistic and fair. So I would say density and height is an option. Do you open it up to nonprofits? Do you open it up to educational institutions? I do want to lift up what Representative Winter shared early on in the hearing, that there is this really important sort of formula of the percentage of units and the percentage of AMI, that we would love for there to be really intentional workshopping on that as well. The TOD piece in 8002 does name this kind of concept, but it requires, and I'm curious, Rep. Winter, what your take would be on this, requires 100% of the units to be affordable at 60% AMI. So that's what's in the 8002 right now. So just to be clear about what is realistic in terms of that formula. So that will be another thing for this body to pick up and just see what pencils out, given the 4% tax credits and so forth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you flagging that, and I think it's worth looking at, because I think we would all love to see more 100% deed restricted affordable projects, but even if you're getting a local abatement, even if you're taking advantage of a 4% credit, you're not going to get there. You probably need a 9% credit, and those are hard to come by. So I think that threshold is also worth looking at, because I think, like you said, the motivating factor here is that we want to see more units built and we want to see more affordable units built. And I think we've heard really compelling testimony from faith leaders and congregation members that they want to do that in a way that fits into the fabric of their community, which I think we all also share that desire. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Haynes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just going to pick up something that you mentioned, is that you were talking about the density and height and the fact that this is a working document that we're hoping that we can improve it. And I think to what Rep. Winter just said in regards to, making it fit into our communities, that's part of
Yes.
the fitting and not fitting.
Yes.
So I appreciate that you just put that comment out there and put it on the table, saying that that is also something that we should maybe consider, as opposed to, again, some of the thing that can be problematic is this as of right situation. If we can do something different to have more of the zoning regs adhered to in regards to different communities. And again, a lot of those zoning regs are not there to exclude anybody, but
Right.
we've got septic issues, we have water issues, et cetera,
Right.
size issues, all of those things. So there's a lot to those zoning regs. They're not just there to keep people out. So I appreciate that you put it out there. Thank you so much for your comments today.
Absolutely, Representative Haynes. I would say, that we understand other states that have done this have explicitly said certain things about number of stories or setback and so forth, so that there's a comfort level across the aisle on the legislation. And something else you said, I was just going to say, for example, you were responding to the possibility in Granby that Reverend Ellis talked about. And again, that would, under current 8002, they would have to find a grant that enables them to do 100% affordable housing on that property at 60% AMI, which is really we've been spending 2 years. We didn't know much about all this till we sort of commissioned a team to start asking developers and faith communities and so forth. And everybody has said, unfortunately, that's not feasible. So the more when we workshop this, we can really get into those nuts and bolts and make sure that we aren't getting in the way of that Granby opportunity or whatever unintentionally. Like you said, the intention isn't exclusion. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Senator Wong online.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome. I think in listening to the debate, we were talking about the constitutionality and all that, but let me take a kind of a local perspective. So should this bill be passed before any of your any of the churches decide to go forth and construct accessible, affordable housing, would you have to go through a local governance of your board of trustees or your board members if it's a congregation or any other kind of religious entity? You have your own governance structure. Would you have to go through your own local governance to make that determination, or is it just for the pasture and Connect to say this is what we're going to do?
Right. Actually, one of the things we learned, Senator Wong, was that a lot of that is a piece that Connect and GIA could play a meaningful role in, is working with faith communities on that discernment process. Because if any of you have been on the board of a faith community, I know you've sat through some long board meetings. So yes, in terms of my denomination, speaking for Unitarian Universalism, this would go through a governmental body and I think in that conversation, if you'd like to incentivize faith communities to build housing, that conversation needs to go well on that level, on the congregational level. People need to feel like, hey, if we invest this kind of people, this kind of money, this kind of time, and our treasured, precious property that we consider sacred, they want to know that it's predictable. They want to know that it's not just cross your fingers and hope for the best. They want to know that water, sewage, safety, environment, everything, that they are in a good shape. And yes, now let's commission a team to go forward and pursue this. So it would have to go through that process. Connect and GIA have do not have that kind of power to exert. So again, and Senator Wong, that means it would be a very local decision. It would be based in that institution on that property.
And continuing that, because I have served on boards and I know how well-intentioned but very much strongly opinionated they are, and they're deeply engaged in the community. So I think thank you for that answer and kind of reaffirming that taking away from the Supreme Court and the national, but very much local and board governance. You're saying that the board or the governance council will have a very strong impact on it. And I agree. I think continuing along that same line is, would you be working with the local municipalities? Because some of our churches are in historical districts, to be able to comply with historical designation and conservation concerns, environmental impact. Would you envision, should this pass, a collaborative and local kind of input, not control, but local kind of input in addressing these issues of conservation, preservation, sustainability, and compatibility with height and density? What would you say to that?
Right. I would direct you to one of the written testimonies, which is actually from Congregation Mishkan Israel in Hamden. Cantor Sierra speaks about their property, which is like a 9-acre property. Their building is a historical landmark because Martin Luther King Jr. preached there back in the day. And so they know that they will need to navigate some of these concerns and how special that location is. We've had really helpful conversations with preservation specialists in Connecticut who have assured us, to my delight, that they are very interested in working with faith communities to enable a building to stay intact and be well cared for, as opposed to left to rot because it's no longer being used, and it's also not being cared for. So absolutely, those conversations around preservation and what that building means to the community would be absolutely a part of the process on that local level, Senator Wong.
No, I appreciate hearing that. And I think you speak for many of your religious faith leaders that the concept is important for fulfilling the mission of support in the community. And so what I've heard from you is the fact that should this bill pass, you would have to have local governance within your faith center to be able to collaborate and make a decision and have direct input. And then what I also heard on my second question is you would also have local municipalities in regards to knowledge and insight and familiarity with the unique property that you just described and many others of historical context, environmental density,
right,
scope, and height. So you're saying that you're very conscious of that and that you would be very respectful of that. And you would welcome that kind of input from the local municipalities for the knowledge that they know. Would that be correct?
That is correct, Senator Wong.
So it's kind of interesting, and last year I actually supported the bill because I believe in my faith leaders and faith community advocates and your parishioners and members, that you live in the community and you know what you believe in. And I do believe in a separation of church and state, and that there is a noble mission to fulfill access and equity for people in our community, all background, all ethnicities, all economics. But isn't it interesting that when you look at faith and the highest level of faith in fulfilling that mission as it relates to affordable housing, that you would be, and many of our church leaders through Connect and all the other initiatives, would actually be cognizant and respectful of local governance and local uniqueness in regards to historical preservation, environmental, community scope and height and density. Isn't that ironic that you, as a faith-based to a higher calling, would still be respectful of all of those things and fulfilling the affordable housing mission, but that through our legislation in the past few years, we have said that Hartford and a centralized state legislative fiat knows better than the local communities. So you can see my crux. I support affordable, accessible housing and the noble efforts that our faith leaders and Connect have undertaken. But at the same time, in fulfilling that important mission, you have paid respect and connection to your internal governance of government and the experts within the community to create solutions versus some of the proposals that we have seen come out of Hartford in recent years. Again, well-intentioned, but when you overrun and you don't implement policies with input from local governance, from community people, members that know what is in the best interest, I think it is disrespectful to the intentions of a well-intended goal, but execution is flawed. So I want to thank you for your explanation, and I look forward to talking to more of the faith leaders and asking very much the same question, that should this bill pass, that they will continue to be respectful of the governance of the local entity, and that they would be very conscious as good neighbors of density, of scope, preservation, and environmental impact. So again, thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to continuing this discussion with you into the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Wong. I think it is, we do really value civic engagement and our relationships with governmental bodies and people who get things done. That's really important to us in Connect and in GIA.
Senator Rowan.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Thank you. Thank you so very much for being here today with us, and the outstanding testimony is going to help us. Like you mentioned earlier, yes, we have the housing crisis, not just one area, all the area, right? Either you're talking the trans-oriented housing, workforce housing, supporting housing, affordable housing. You mentioned earlier, single mother or grandmother want to move out because downside can't find anything. I think this bill will help us create more housing, but again, this is a work in progress. And this is why we have the public hearing. And I want to thanks to Senator Ong. Last year he supported the bill, and this circle, most of our colleagues supported. And hopefully this year we can finish the finish line. And thank you again for being here today with us.
Thank you,
Madam
Senator
Chair.
Rahman.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none at this time, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Up next, Rafi Podolsky from Connecticut Legal Services, Inc., number 19, in person.
Thank you very much, Representative Cabos-Degra and members of the Planning and Development Committee. My name is Rafael Podolsky. I'm a lawyer with Connecticut Legal Services. And I'm actually here to speak, I hope very briefly, actually, on House Bill number 5395, which is the bill that actually deals with modular and prefabricated housing. The bill, what the bill does is essentially the view that I want to express to you on the bill is that we certainly have no objection to the primary part of the bill in Section 1, which is to say that that municipalities in doing zoning for single-family homes should treat modular housing in the same way as stick-built housing. And to some extent, there's already something in the Zoning Enabling Act 8-2 that kind of says that, maybe not nearly as clearly. Our concern is transferring this over into Section 1C, and then it's Section 2, in which for housing that is not long-term deed restricted or otherwise protected for long-term affordability, it proposes moratorium points under 8-30G. It's just, I would suggest to you, it's just not appropriate to be doing that. That's not what the moratorium under 8-30G is about. And in this particular case, because the way in which this bill is written, there's actually, it's not even an incentivizing factor, because what the bill does, the bill is a substantive bill that says towns shall treat manufactured housing in the same way it treats stick-built housing. So it's not a matter of incentivizing the town to do it. It's really reaffirming what is in Section 8-2, that the town should be doing that anyway. And so from that perspective, we cannot be supportive of the bill. That's all I have to say. And
Okay.
I thank you for the opportunity
Short
to
and
say it.
We appreciate that. Any questions on this testimony? Seeing none, thank you so much, Rafi. We appreciate hearing it.
Thank you very much.
Number 20, Michelle Farella from the CT Veterinary Medical Association. Thank you for hanging with us.
Good afternoon, committee chairs, ranking members, and members of the Planning and Development Committee. My name is Dr. Michelle Farella. I'm a licensed veterinarian in Connecticut and a representative of the Connecticut Veterinary Medical Association. We appreciate the opportunity to express our concerns with House Bill 5393, an act concerning dog licensing. We have reservations about the unintended consequences to the public health if required dog licensing is changed from every year to every 3 years. It's critically important to recognize that the primary reason we vaccinate animals against rabies is to protect humans from what is a terrible and almost invariably fatal disease. This disease is very present in Connecticut's wildlife. According to the most recent data from DPH in 2023, 36 wild animals tested positive for rabies across 26 Connecticut towns. Before the advent of rabies vaccines for dogs, it was easy for this wild virus to become stable in domestic dog populations, and this was the primary route of exposure for people. The yearly dog license is an important checkpoint to ensure that dogs in Connecticut are vaccinated for rabies. A current rabies vaccine is required for license renewal, and many dog owners keep up with rabies boosters solely because of this license requirement. For those who fail to renew their dog license, this list is available to their animal control officer. That officer can then call on these owners and insist that they obtain that license and bring their rabies vaccine up to date. So here's the issue. Rabies vaccines for dogs are effective for either 1 or 3 years, depending on the type of vaccine given and the number of boosters. So changing the dog license frequency to every 3 years means that interval will not necessarily correspond with many dogs' rabies vaccine duration. This would lead to a mismatch where dogs could go multiple years without a legal impetus to get their rabies vaccine, undermining what has so far been a very successful public health program to prevent human rabies here in Connecticut. Veterinarians take our charge to protect public health seriously, and so we believe that this change would be an unwise and poor public health policy. Thank you.
Do you have any suggestions for us, in a way that we could, make this a little bit easier on the consumer and on the town clerks, but also still meet the public health standard?
Sure. I suppose to answer that, I would want to know what the goal is. I saw that the rest of the bill includes changing it to an online version instead of going to your town clerk, and I think that's great. I guess I would need to know why the every year license is a hardship to answer that.
I think that it originally came from a conversation with one of our colleagues who's not actually on the committee, with his town clerk. I believe that's because we had this bill last year also. And I believe that was where the conversation originated from, that they thought that it would be, better to go to a 3 years. But then we heard, well, little dogs are this and big dogs are that. And then Town Clerks Association actually wasn't as on board as his local town clerk. So we've heard a lot of different testimonies. So I just wanted to try to get as much feedback as possible. And I think the online piece may sort of assist with some of the other issues, in terms of the desire to not have as much onus on having to physically go to town hall to deal with this. Any questions? Representative Haynes. Oh, sorry.
Are you okay? Okay. I was just going to add to the conversation in regards to this. I think some of it too is that the amount of work that is necessary to do this on a yearly basis by the town clerks, and all the money comes to Hartford except for $1. So it's just, if you can do it online, obviously that would be a huge thing. Is there a particular advantage or disadvantage to the rabies vaccine that's a 1 year versus a 3? Is there a cost issue? What's the difference between the two?
It primarily comes down to the animal's age and how many boosters they've had. So the first time they get a rabies vaccine, that vaccine is good for 1 year. After that, the vaccine can be given every 3 years. So most dogs, like when they get their first vaccine at 12 weeks, after that it's 1 year, and then beyond that it's every 3 years. If somebody adopts a dog who's 5 years old and they don't know if they've had vaccines before, then that dog starts out with a 1 year booster, and then after that it's every 3 years. If a dog gets in a tussle with a wild animal, gets a bite, they're mandated to booster that vaccine. That would still be a 3 year, but there's just a lot of scenarios where it doesn't line up, and like having it always be every 3 years, you're going to miss a lot.
I wonder if we did it online, whether the online, I mean, they can literally, my phone can hear that we're talking about dog licenses, and now I'm going to have posts about dog licenses. So I'm wondering if there's a way to connect that so that we know that this particular dog or that particular dog needs a 3 year versus a 1 year, and then it solves all the problems, doesn't it?
Yeah, potentially, if there is a way to tie in when their rabies vaccine is due, I think definitely. I would say that some things that have come up in the past for our profession is that our technology is not always as robust as what's for human, as far as translating what's in our medical record systems to other systems. So it would have to be something that either the owner is putting in themselves or the state is inputting. We don't really have capability for our medical record software to integrate with other software to input that directly.
Okay, so last question. What does the state do with the notification that they get from the town clerks when a dog is registered? Do you have any idea? Is there some kind of database somewhere that has all our pups on the list, or?
I personally don't know what happens with that. It probably is a good question for animal control officers or the town clerks, but to my knowledge, there is a list somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there is that list and there is something online, there is some kind of database, and we obviously send the information through the town clerks to the state already. Maybe there is a way to do this. It's going to probably take an IT guru, but maybe we can fix this, and it's not something that'll be onerous on our town clerks, which is ultimately, and at the same time, it's a public health situation, and we should continue to do that as well. But thank you for your answers. I appreciate you being here today.
Of course.
Thank you, Senator Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Dr. Ferrella, thank you for being here. I take care of people as a doctor, not animals. Although I can tell you my cat doesn't like it when I drag him to the vet, but I'm sure he appreciates the great care he gets from his doctor and the treats I have to give him to coax him to be brought to the vet, which is probably why he acts up, because he knows he gets treats. I've seen some people way back in the day in my initial training die from encephalitis caused by rabies. I can tell you it is a very bad way to die. And I think you mentioned this earlier in your testimony, but I just want to highlight this point. My understanding is that the vast majority, if not, I don't want to say nearly all, of the cases of humans getting rabies are from dog bites. Is that correct? Statistically, is it a high number of humans getting rabies? Is it from dog bites?
I don't have that data in front of me to tell you exactly. I do know a lot of it depends on public health measures. There are countries right now in this day and age that do not have a robust vaccination program for cats and dogs. And in those countries, yes, it primarily does come from dogs. And years ago, like you remember Old Yeller, and there's plenty of literature to tell you about. We did not always have a friendly relationship with dogs because that was the primary source. I don't know right now, to be frank with you.
No, I appreciate that. And, you know, it was a little bit of an unfair question, because if you look at statistics worldwide, it gets skewed by many other countries that don't even have even basic health care for people, let alone for anything for animals, versus, you know, in this country. But certainly rabies can be preventable. But to treat it in a human is very, very difficult. It's a very bad actor. My understanding is, and I appreciate the points that have been made, that your viewpoints and the viewpoint of your society is that given that this can be preventable, that to make certain that dog owners are having their dogs get the rabies shots and stay on whatever schedule is advised medically, while looking for perhaps an easier way, maybe online, to do the current permitting process or licensing process for dog licenses. that you wouldn't be opposed to perhaps having them do it online, but making certain it's being done so that way the dogs are being kept up to date with the rabies vaccinations.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're all for doing it in a way that's easier for everybody involved. We do really need this tool to make sure that this public health measure is happening. We also see vaccine hesitancy and misinformation about vaccines trickle into our domain. And I do have conversations every week about how vaccines work and why they're important. And, we can call our clients and remind them that they're due and please come in, you're due for your rabies vaccine. And that's only so much we can do. So I think having this extra measure of like, hey, it is required by law, your town is gonna check in with you, you got to do it, is helpful for such a serious disease for people.
No, I appreciate that, and I just want to make certain I was taking away correctly, what your testimony is. So it sounds like there may well be a way to find common ground to streamline a licensing process per se, but still adhere from the veterinary point of view, an important health aspect to what's going on. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I don't, Rep. Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your testimony. Can you explain more about how veterinary offices currently share medical records, like from one office to another? And in this fantasy world where we have or maybe future world, maybe not so fantastical world where we have an online system for this, would there be an optimal way for veterinary offices to electronically share records with municipal clerks?
Yes, there are a number of different softwares available for veterinary practices, and none of them communicate with each other. So we share records by creating a PDF of the animal's history and emailing it.
Okay, so
Some
it's
places
like
it's still fax, but mostly it's email. But there's not any platform where they're integrated right now.
so whether it was like a PDF or paper copy, if we had, and I don't know if this would be better or worse for the clerks, but if we had, you could apply for a 1-year, 2-year, or 3-year license depending on the duration of the rabies certificate. Would that address your concerns? Like if I did this, the same day or later that week, applied for a 3-year license, paid whatever the 3-year license fee was, and submitted the rabies certificate right then, would that, if there were several different kinds of, or several different terms to the license, would that work?
Yeah, I think that would work. The pet owner will probably go into the clerk's office with a print of their rabies certificate, or they might upload it online. And as long as there's a way for somebody to verify that it's accurate, it is 1 year or 3 year, and make sure they're signing up for the right type of dog license, I think that would work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I don't see any other question at this time. Thank you so much for being here today with us, and thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Samuel Gold. Samuel Gold online.
Yes, good afternoon. Just 1 second. My name is Sam Gold. I'm Executive Director of RiverCog. I'd first like to speak in strong support of House Bill 5390, an act concerning the Regional Planning Incentive Account. The COGs are very grateful for the funding that we received in Public Act 25-1. HB 5390 clarifies that the intent of this funding was to allow COGs to work on 3 topics: housing, solid waste, and flooding. The current language has been interpreted by OPM to make COGs choose between working on housing and solid waste or housing and flooding. This bill clarifies that funding can be used on work in all 3 areas, housing, waste, and flooding. This bill is strongly supported by all the COGs of Connecticut. Also, I would like to speak on House Bill 5396. I first would like to recognize religious organizations as an important partner in addressing our state's housing needs. However, I do not believe this bill should be passed as written. The bill would provide religious organizations the ability to build any amount of housing of any height and density on land via summary review if 30% of the units are deed restricted affordable, regardless of the underlying zoning. I will point out that this development already is exempt from local zoning, and the vast majority of municipality is under 830G. Zoning is an exercise of police power to protect the public's health, safety, and welfare. This bill would prohibit reasonable limits on development on property. High limits are driven by the limitation of fire departments or the needs of airports or heliports. Density requirements are intended to prevent overcrowding and impacts to neighbors. Summary review requires an assessment of health and safety, but this bill explicitly prohibits such protections. This bill provides religious organizations with significant benefits over secular organizations. Other states' laws, such as California, provide secular organizations the same benefits, and I think this would help with concerns regarding the Establishment Clause of the Constitution. Under federal RILUPA and the Fair Housing Act and Connecticut law, religious organizations are allowed to build and reserve housing only for adherents and may be able to deny housing to people with beliefs, sexual orientations, or family arrangements that conflict with their religion. A person may have to become a congregant in order to obtain housing, or a congregant who has a falling out with their church could legally lose their housing. The way other states have gotten around this concern of the Establishment Clause was explicitly prohibiting discrimination and making it clear that religious organizations were being provided this benefit for a public purpose, housing for all people. In order for this bill to work, religious organizations must provide religiously neutral housing without discrimination, and I don't see that reference in the bill. Furthermore, religious organizations are not taxed. I do not see where in the bill religious organizations are required to give up this tax exemption on the property. If the housing is operated as a business, they would be taxable. But since this is affordable housing, it would be probably more likely operated as a nonprofit, and nonprofits are not taxed. And finally, to my knowledge, this would be the first instance where the zoning changes depending on the ownership of the land. Every zoning district. Can you
please summarize?
Yes. This will create a ton of work for municipalities. Hundreds of zoning districts will have to be updated. And every time a religious organization buys a new piece of land, a new zoning update will have to take place. The October 1st deadline plus the PA 25-1 deadline, which July 1st for zoning updates, will make this very difficult to comply with. Thank you again for letting me speak today.
Members, any questions? Seen or hear? Sorry, Rep. Debetsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming in. Which area does your COG cover?
We cover the lower Connecticut River Valley, which is Middlesex County and Lyman, Old Lyman, New London County.
Okay, are you speaking on behalf of the COG?
Yes, I am.
Okay, is it your feeling that as written, this bill would be unconstitutional?
I think the question is how do you create a law that provides for a public purpose? And the public purpose is addressing the need for affordable housing in Connecticut. And the Federal Fair Housing Act has specific carve-outs for religious organizations. A religious organization does not have to provide housing to people that are not part of their religion. If the intent here is to provide a public housing for a general good for the public, then it's not an issue with the Establishment Clause. But but I'm not a lawyer. I don't see that in the plain language of the bill text. So that is my concern.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other question? Seen or hear none. Thank you, sir, for being here with us and your testimony. Our next speaker, Corey McCurry, in person. Please turn on your microphone. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Committee. My name is Corey Mackey, and I live in Newington. I attend Emmanuel Congregational Church in Hartford, and I am the Executive Director of the Center for Leadership and Justice, which is the home of GIA. I'm writing to express my strong personal support and the support of the Center for Leadership and Justice and GIA for House Bill 5396, yes, in God's backyard. National studies show that faith community accounts for over 40% of social safety net spending in many states. Our congregations are housing people who are homeless, feeding those who are hungry, providing medical care to those who are poor, and supporting families in crisis. This is central to our mission, and these services are welcome and relied upon by the state. But it is not enough to just feed, clothe, and counsel families. Our faith also calls us to change the systems that create the need for these ministries in the first place. One critical way to do that is by changing unnecessary barriers to creating affordable housing on land owned by congregations themselves. Fewer safety nets would be needed if people had access to homes they can afford. House Bill 5396 is a modest, sensible bill. It will not by itself end the housing crisis. But like so many services provided by faith communities, it can make an invaluable contribution. Our housing crisis is solvable, but we are currently constrained by human-made regulations that prioritize vague notions of town character over the dignity and survival of people. Congregations have land. They have the desire to serve. They have deep, long-term care for their neighbors. Now is the time to reduce development barriers for religious organizations. But not just for any organization. They must have owned land for at least 3 years and propose a development that meets all health, environmental, safety, and all other objective standards required of new developments. Some may ask why we need YIGBI with both 8002 and 830G. The answer is straightforward. 830G is a litigation-heavy appeals process, and HB 8002 is about regional planning and incentives. House Bill 5396 fills a different gap. It offers a streamlined approval path, currently unavailable, for a narrow set of faith-owned sites, turning underused land into code-compliant, affordable housing without court fights or long delays. It complements rather than replaces existing laws. Connecticut faces a severe housing crisis. No single policy will solve it, but House Bill 5396 can play an important role in moving us forward. Faith communities are trusted to catch people and families drowning in immediate needs. Please help us swim upstream and remove at least one of the causes that keeps pushing them into the water. Thank you.
Any questions? Rep. Dubisky?
Thank you for coming in. I very much appreciate it. What would you think about an amendment that exempted the largest cities in the state from this bill?
I would need to understand why.
I'm sorry, could you just get a little bit?
I would need to, I wouldn't understand. I need to understand the rationale for that.
Okay, so let's say it was the cities and towns that had the lowest income per capita, and that would include all of the big cities in the state.
So where we need housing most, we would exempt it, is that?
Yeah, exempted from the ability of a religious organization to take advantage of the benefits of this bill in those places.
That's not making sense to me at the moment, but maybe I'm just not understanding. So no, I would not support that.
You would not support that. Okay. Are you familiar with the housing bill, the so-called affordable housing bill that recently passed?
8002?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you aware that the largest cities in the state were exempt from many of the provisions in that?
Yes.
Okay. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, we'd have to go point by point, and I'm happy to look at that and send you a written response to which ones I think make sense and which ones don't.
Okay. But on this bill, you would not support exempting the largest cities?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And my co-chair, Kapras Dagra.
Thanks for being here today. We appreciate it. I think there's been some misunderstanding, so I just want to kind of clarify. Do you think that churches, mosques, temples want to build this housing because they're trying to proselytize to the people who will live there in some way?
No.
Okay.
I think they're doing it because they're deeply committed to serving those who are most vulnerable in our communities.
So we wouldn't necessarily have to worry about, that being part of this, because I think that there's been some testimony today that is somewhat confused as to the purpose of this bill. Would you object in any way if nonprofits were added to this as well?
No, but the law would object to renting just to people of that tradition. So it's a
Right,
red
moot
herring.
point, moot point, right?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I want to ask, I know there are no more question in here. Can you talk about a little bit summary process and 8-30G?
Sure. So for summary review for this process, if without that, our congregations would be required to answer the questions that are really vague, subjective arguments often used to keep affordable housing developments out. Summary review requires a set of objective standards that the property either meets them, health, safety, environmental, all the things we've talked about, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then the congregation has to come back and meet those codes.
Well, thank you so much, Rep. Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the conversation that we had with Reverend O'Brien, she had said that there is maybe some wiggle room in regards to density and height. How do you feel about those items?
Yeah, I mean, we are not ideological about this. What we want to do is create a law that allows congregations of goodwill to build housing that's desperately needed. So I think we're certainly willing to negotiate, but not to the point that we then can't meet those like are the current barriers, right? And the height thing, again, we keep hearing these fear tactics of, oh, what if the apartment or the building is so tall a fire truck can't get to it? Well, that would not have passed a safety code. So a lot of these things are covered by existing objective standards.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate your flexibility. Thanks.
Thank you. And I don't see any other question at this time. Thank you so much for your testimony and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for listening.
Our next speaker, Carrie Ho.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and representatives of the Planning and Development Committee. My name is Carrie Howe. I'm the Outreach Director at Center Church in Hartford and also the Director of the Overnight Warming Shelter that operates from December 1st until April 1st each year for the last 3 years. I wear many hats, including everything I just said. I also work as a probate court conservator, community advocate, but today I come as a frontline worker. We're in the midst of a housing crisis that creates new cases of homelessness every single day. This crisis does not affect just one population, nor does it stem from a single cause. It impacts our elderly men and women living on fixed incomes who cannot keep pace with the rising rents, individuals who simply can't access stable, affordable housing despite doing and working every second that they can, community members navigating significant personal challenges without adequate support. During our current shelter season, approximately 96% of our guests over the last 4 months are over the age of 65, many living on fixed incomes, but the gap between what they receive each month and the cost of housing has become impossible to bridge. Instability increases medical complexities and physical disabilities and barriers. Our overflowing shelters are not filled with people who are unwilling to change. They're filled with people trying desperately to hold on to stability, and people who have worked their whole lives and have no means to increase their funds, their monthly income. Churches, seasonal shelters, along with already overextended year-round programs, have become the default safety net for many of our community's most vulnerable neighbors. And as a church, we've stepped up every year for the last 3 years and will continue to do so, but it's not enough. As Pastor Liza spoke earlier, our 51-person capacity last night showed us 76 people in need. Allowing churches that are already doing the work and those willing to jump in and do more, the autonomy over their land and facilities to assist our unhoused community members is not radical. It's practical, it's responsible, and it's our duty. We already collaborate with courts, access networks, local emergency responders, nonprofits, grassroots workers, but no single entity, including the state of Connecticut, can meet this need alone, hence the reason it has not been met. We're not looking for temporary solutions, we're looking for true collaboration. And churches are already embedded in the community. We have land, facilities, volunteers. We have the trust of our community, not just our members. Last year, there were some concerns raised about this bill: safety, cleanliness, the stigma around homelessness and what is affordable. And to that I ask, do we recognize that how many of the conditions people fear are actually worsened because individuals do not have access to housing? Do we recognize that many churches and grassroots leaders are already stepping forward to help? And most importantly, do we understand that if we do not create structured, supported spaces, that homelessness will not disappear? It will spill into our streets, our neighborhoods. There will be no coordination without support, without accountability. So when you consider allowing churches this access and this permission, I urge you to focus on what it might look like next year. It is tripling, it is doubling. We're asking for the ability to collaborate. On April 1st, when we close, as of today, 11 individuals over 65 will be out in the streets, 14 more with walkers and severe or terminal illnesses, and 7 with intellectual disabilities will be on the streets, all with fixed income who cannot afford current housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question, members? I don't see any question. My co-chair, Kavros Degra.
Sorry, it's always me. Carrie, I just wanted to thank you for being here today and thank you for all of the work that you do, because I know that it has been a particularly difficult winter. You have had cold weather shelter after cold weather shelter night. Last night, unfortunately, was not called as one, but certainly with the ice, that does not mean that you were not there providing all the services that you normally do. So I just want to thank you for being here today, and we appreciate the testimony. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Thank you. And I don't see any other question at this time. And thank you so much for being here today with us. And thank you for your testimony. With that, our next speaker, Lori Sweet. Laura Sweet, welcome and thank you for being here today with us.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning and Development Committee. My name is Lori Sweet, and I'm the co-chair of the End Homelessness Caucus. I come here today in support of House Bill 5396. I'm so grateful to the leadership of this committee and Connect for being part of the solution for our housing crisis. As a member of the Housing Committee, we need to explore every possible option to get folks housed. This bill just makes sense. Let's enable faith communities to quickly build housing, but by following current building standards and environmental compliance. Speaking as the co-chair of the End Homelessness Caucus, we hear from folks, you just heard from folks, that shelters are full and warming centers will be closed on April 1st. This is a way for religious institutions, often already doing the work for caring for our unhoused community members, to contribute their own property to permanent housing solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any question at this time. We thank you so much for being here today with us, and thank you for everything you're doing for our community. With that, our next speaker, Nichols Cantor.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Honorable Co-Chair Senator Rahman and Representative Kavros DeGraw, Ranking Member Senator Gordon and Representative Haynes, and the entirety of the Planning and Development Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to submit this testimony in support of HB 5396. My name is Nick Cantor, and I'm the Program Director for ProHomes Connecticut, formerly Desegregate Connecticut, a ProHomes coalition of neighbors and nonprofits and a program of the Regional Plan Association. We are dedicated to creating a more prosperous, equitable, and sustainable Connecticut through land use reforms at the local, regional, and state levels. I'm here to testify in support of this bill, which is a promising example of a YIGBY, yes, in God's backyard reform, an innovative housing policy approach being adopted in many states. Connecticut is currently experiencing an unprecedented housing shortage, with low-income residents most acutely impacted. At the same time, Connecticut's faith institutions own thousands of acres of lands across the state, with much of it underutilized, such as overbuilt parking lots and vacant parcels or buildings. Many of these properties are also in town centers near transit stations and already have access to critical public infrastructure like water and sewer. This is a strong economic and moral opportunity for mission-focused institutions to build more homes in our state. HB 5396 empowers those various faith institutions to be part of the solution to the housing crisis by unlocking their unused land for much needed homes. This bill will reduce the regulatory barriers that often impede religious institutions from building homes. There are some valid concerns around density, height, and tax implications, which are not currently addressed in this text, and we are confident in this committee to strike the right balance. We see this as a great starting point. States like Maryland, California, and Florida have already passed similar legislation and seen success. The trend is clear. When governments cut red tape, faith institutions can step up and build housing that private developers may otherwise not build. YIGBI projects have delivered new homes across the nation, from 2 homes in a small church in Boise, Idaho, to 99 home apartments in a large Methodist church in Washington, D.C. Connecticut's faith communities should be empowered to do the same. Faith institutions are often pillars of the community, frequently providing services like temporary shelter and free food. Dignified, affordable housing is also a strong central tenet for them, but it's in short supply across our state. Let's make it easier for our churches, synagogues, mosques, waderas, and other religious institutions to help close the gap. I urge the committee to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question, members? I don't see any question at this time. So thank you for your testimony. With that, our next speaker, Elisa Clements.
Good afternoon, co-chairs Raman and Kavros DeGraw and members of the committee. It's good to see you all again. Hello? Can you all hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened. It switched me back to being just a viewer.
It's okay.
But thank you for being patient. And I'm here on behalf of Pet Advocacy Network, which represents businesses and organizations across the responsible pet care community, as well as pet owners nationwide. I'm here to respectfully ask for your support of House Bill 5393, which modernizes Connecticut's dog licensing system. At its core, this bill is about bringing a decades-old system into line with how people and municipalities are operating currently. Right now, the licensing is still largely built around annual in-person processes, and that can create unnecessary hurdles for pet owners and extra admin work for the towns. This bill also makes some very practical updates because it allows the Department of Agriculture to issue licenses electronically, giving residents the option to renew online while also keeping the town clerk process in place. So it's not replacing local control, it's simply expanding the access. It also aligns licensing with that typical 3-year rabies vaccine schedule, which reduces repetitive paperwork for both dog owners and municipal staff while still maintaining a strong public health protection. I do want to acknowledge that their concerns were raised about the rabies vaccine schedule and the concern about renewing it at 3 years. I do agree adjusting the renewal to align with the vaccine schedule for the 1 year versus 3 years, with whichever is most appropriate is going to strengthen this bill. So we are very in support of that. And then finally, the bill updates the licensing fee while directing part of the funds to the animal population control account. So it'll support spay and neuter programs that will help reduce shelter intake and long-term municipal costs. Overall, this is a very thoughtful modernization that supports responsible pet ownership while making the system more efficient for everybody involved. And so for those reasons, we respectfully urge the committee to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any questions? Rep. Hines.
Hi, Elisa. I just wanted to say thank you for being here again, and we appreciate it. And we were just saying how it's, I think the online piece of this bill is probably the way that we should go with this. And I think that would solve a lot of problems. And while still taking care of your pets, that's up to you as far as how you do that. But we can do the registry online and be done with it. So thank you so much for being here again today.
Yeah, of course. And anything we can do to help further this along, I'm happy to work with you all.
Thank you, Representative. Any other question? Seeing or hear none at this time, thank you for your testimony. With that, our next speaker, Errol Orley. I don't see you're going to hold on, Errol.
He needs to accept his
Okay.
invitation to be promoted.
Okay. So how do?
Hey, hold on. Just wait. He's right there. Okay,
Okay. I can see the.
27.
Okay. Please proceed, sir.
He just needs to unmute.
Please unmute and proceed.
Okay. Hi, how are you?
Very well. Please continue.
Okay. Yes, my church is here in Bridgeport. We have a 1.69 acres of land located along Fairfield Avenue. We have been in this location since 1800 and in Bridgeport since 1600. Our church building and rectory are on the National Register of Historic Place. In 2025, we work with a religious affiliated developer to see if it was feasible to build an apartment building with affordable housing. But on our property, the developer indicated zoning approval would take at least a year, and the financial viability would require more market rate housing than our mission could get, prefer. The property is already zoned for, as of right now, multifamily development and maintaining members' support through the year. This plus this approval process was deemed to be too difficult for us. A streamlined process would keep our members and our developer engaged with more flexibility. I urge you to pass YIGBI and vote in support of the HB 5396. Affordable housing is needed to create a pathway that make it possible for the faith institution to contribute to the solution. So I am Errol, a warden, senior warden at St. John's, and we do need the affordable housing. And if our property could accommodate that, we would have gone with it. So I'm really, supporting the development of affordable housing and church properties if we can.
Thank you. Any question, members? I don't see any question at this time, sir. Thank you so much for your testimony. With that, we're moving to next speaker, John Gaskowski. Did I say right?
Very well. Thank you. Can you see and can you see and hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Co-Chair Rahman, Co-Chair Kavros DeGraw, and members of the Planning and Development Committee. For the record, my name is John Gaskowski. I am a professional planner with Tyche Planning and Policy Group, and I am the Government Relations Officer and Co-Chair of Government Relations for the Connecticut chapter of the American Planning Association. We are, as hopefully you are aware at this point, a professional organization of 400 plus municipal, regional, state planners, private consultants, and allied professionals. We are your eyes and ears on the ground when it comes to planning and zoning and housing and community development issues in Connecticut. We submitted 3 pieces of testimony for today's hearing. I'd like to comment briefly on 2. First, and I think one that has gotten less airtime is Senate Bill 361, allowing municipalities to require a fee in lieu of sidewalks. This is a very important tool that has not been explicitly available to municipalities that would allow planning and zoning commissions to not require sidewalks in specific developments under specific circumstances. It's a very rural area and the sidewalk doesn't connect or lead anywhere, to instead take a fee and allow those sidewalks to be constructed or repaired or upgraded somewhere else in the municipality where it's more needed. We do this already in the subdivision process, where we require either open space or we can require a fee in lieu of open space that will allow a municipality to set aside funds to purchase more valuable open space or conservation land somewhere else in the municipality. This would provide the same right for sidewalks, and it would allow municipalities to be more flexible in planning for their pedestrian infrastructure. So this is an important and a very, very low impact, it's no cost to anybody, bill. And so we strongly encourage the passage of that, which has been a planning priority for several years. The second important bill is 5396, the so-called YIGBY bill, allowing religious institutions to build housing. We are broadly in support of this concept, and we do believe that religious institutions, particularly those with excess land, should be allowed to contribute to alleviating our housing crisis. The specifics of this bill, however, are not quite suitable, and I think it needs a little bit of work. We do believe that religious institutions, even though they're trying to build, more housing, should not be given the sort of blank check that this bill proposes to give them. We believe that the housing developed should still comply with basic zoning things, setbacks, densities, heights, so that the development is still in keeping with the public order, the orderly development of the communities, public health, safety, and welfare, and some of those considerations. We included in our testimony some references to a bill that was passed recently in Massachusetts that did have some density caps, height, setbacks, and things like that. But broadly speaking, we are very much in favor of allowing religious institutions to be able to more freely contribute to solving our current housing crisis. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions at this time? Rep. Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, do you have the Massachusetts bill number?
I would have to, I apologize, I don't have my testimony up.
Is it in your testimony?
It is in our testimony,
I'll
yes.
take a look. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Chair.
Thank you. Any other question? At this time, I don't see any question coming. Thank you so much for your testimony. With that, we are moving next speaker, Mark Linger. Mark Linger, I don't see you online. We're going to hold on. We're moving to next speaker, John Batiste. John Batiste. Batiste. Please turn on your.
Thank you for the privilege.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Senator Rahman, Representative Kavros DeGraw, and members of the Planning and Development Committee. My name is John Batiste III, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of HB 5396, also known as YIGBY, Yes in God's Backyard. In Bridgeport, the housing crisis is not abstract. We see the urgency of it every day as families struggle to stay housed and working people are pushed further and further from stability. I serve as an elder and a founding member of Triumphant Christian Church in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I have served in leadership at our church for over 35 years and have been a homeowner and resident of Bridgeport for 38 years. Triumphant Christian Church was founded in 1985 by our pastor, Bishop Cynthia D.G. West, who still leads our congregation today. For decades, our church has been committed to meeting both spiritual and practical needs in our community. One way we do that is through our East End property, which has housed a weekly feeding program and emergency food pantry known as King's Pantry since 1990. For many years, we have served over 100,000 meals annually. In recent years, the need has only grown. More working families, seniors, and people facing housing instability are coming through our doors. Hunger and housing insecurity, as you know, are deeply connected, and we witness that connection every week. Our vision is to redevelop our East End site into a mixed-use ministry space. We would continue operating our weekly feeding program and emergency food pantry on the ground floor while creating affordable housing above it. This would allow us to serve people not just with a meal in a moment of need, but with greater stability and dignity over time. Any modest income generated would be reinvested directly into sustaining and expanding our food ministry. The YIGBY framework is important because it recognizes that churches and faith-based institutions across Connecticut steward land that could be responsibly used to meet urgent community needs with a clearer, more supportive pathway from vision to action while collaborating with municipalities. We are not developers. We are a local church that has been rooted in Bridgeport for 40 years. But we are willing to step into this moment because the need is too great to ignore. The housing crisis is not theoretical for us. It shows up every week in our food pantry line. Thank you for your leadership and for considering how policy can empower community-rooted institutions to be part of the solution to Connecticut's housing challenges.
Thank you, sir. A question from my co-chair, Kavros DeGraw.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. We know it's been a long day. We appreciate it. And thank you especially for the food insecurity work that you're doing. That is a cause very near and dear to my heart. So I very much appreciate that. My question is, do you have a sense yet, because you're thinking about, sort of, it's almost like keeping the first floor retail, so to speak, and then building above. Do you have any sense of the number of units you might be able to create above the food pantry and where you're already serving your community?
At this time, we have not gone that far. When we got excited about this YIGBY legislation, and we had been talking for several years about the possibility of doing what I had stated. But as far as numbers and units and all of that, we have not done. Now, the food pantry, I will have to tell you that the building that we're in now is 5,000 square feet. It's too crowded. And so we would definitely expand that building, probably tear that building down and build another one. And in doing so, build it larger. But as far as the amount of affordable housing units that we would build, that would be that's something that still would be in discussion.
It's exciting to think about the units. It's not so exciting to hear that you need a bigger food pantry. But that is the reality of what we are seeing right now, especially with the cuts to SNAP at the federal level.
And those are certainly connected.
They are absolutely connected. Certainly the new working requirements, et cetera. So I really do appreciate you being here today. And that's it for me for now.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Is there any other question from members? I don't see any other question at this time. Thank you so much for everything you're doing for our community, and thank you for being here. You was waiting long time. You're from Bridgeport.
Yes.
Almost 2-hour drive. Thank you, sir.
Thank you again for the privilege.
With that, our next speaker is Deborah Fisher. Deborah Fisher. Is it in person? I don't see online. I don't know, anybody see? Yeah. I am moving. We are holding the Deborah Fisher and moving to next speaker, Martin Hub. Commissioner Martin Hub. I see him. Please unmute.
Yes, unfortunately, the video is not able to click on for some reason. I'm not sure why.
No problem. Welcome, Mr. Commissioner. Please proceed.
Thank you, and I apologize for the video. It's showing it's failing, so apologies. Good afternoon, members of the Planning and Development Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Senate Bill 362, an act concerning revisions to the statutes relating to municipal property tax assessment. The Office of Policy and Management supports Senate Bill 362, which implements recommendations to streamline certain municipal assessment operations and to modernize processes. OPM has worked jointly with the Connecticut Association of Assessing Officers on these recommendations. Many of these provisions you will see are repeated from last year's Senate Bill 1343. The sections include amendments that are purely technical in nature to correct errors, omissions, obsolete law, or provide uniformity with existing practice. One new recommendation we have put in is while certain statutes specifically address when a due date fails, on a weekend or holiday, many statutes do not have that provision, causing confusion to the taxpayer and the municipality. A new provision is proposed to provide clarity for the taxpayer when an assessment application or extension is due on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. Should this occur, the application or extension date would be the next day that is not that Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. In my written testimony, I provided a section-by-section explanation of the rationale for each provision. And I would like to again thank the committee for the opportunity to provide this testimony in support of Senate Bill 362. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone would have.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. We appreciate your testimony today, and I am seeing no questions at this time, so you got off easy.
Thank you very much.
Have a good afternoon. Up next, number 33, Jacqueline Page. Not quite last, certainly not least. Please turn your microphone on.
Thank you for having me, Planning and Development Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. My name is Jackie Page, and I'm a 30-year resident of Fairfield. I am a member of First Church Congregational in Fairfield, which has been in residence there since 1639, and a member of Connect, which is a Congregations Organized for New Connecticut, a broad-based organization of 42 faith institutions working together with GIA, which is another 60-plus faith institutions, to have 100 of us supporting this social justice in our region and state. I'm testifying in support of expanding affordable housing in Connecticut through YIGB and in support of HB 5396. I am on the board of a 100-unit affordable housing property owned by 4 churches called Parish Court. In the early 70s, the federal government had a program to fully fund the building of these faith-managed affordable housing properties. I'm told 20,000 of them were built across the United States. We have been housing our neighbors, 62 plus, and the disabled for over 50 years. 82 of our units are 30% AMI with HUD support to HUD and charged at the HUD determined market rate. And 18 of our units are 80% AMI, not supported by HUD. We have paid property taxes since 1975, I think around $70,000 a year. One of our neighbors that abuts our property would like to sell us their home and land, which is 1/3 of an acre, and our property right now is about 5 acres. That property could easily and attractively hold another unit with 10 apartments. Our current 100 units are spread across 6 buildings. We find the approvals needed to acquire that property and build 10 affordable housing units at 30% AMI daunting. That is 10 apartments our neighbors need desperately. I'd also like to address the concern about religious organizations only serving people with the same beliefs in housing. Fair housing law makes that illegal, and we would not do that, and we don't do that currently with Parish Court. I urge you to pass YIGB and to vote in support of HB 5396. Affordable housing is needed, so please create a pathway that makes it possible for faith institutions to contribute to the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. And could you just, since it's 100 units across 6 buildings, I'm just curious, like what's the height of those buildings?
They're 2-story.
So 2-story.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is
all
a
right.
little weird for our age group.
Right.
But we make it work.
Right. I would imagine you have elevators and
Right. We don't have elevators, actually.
Oh,
So
wow.
we actually installed ramps
Okay.
to the tune of about $100,000 so that you could get to the 2nd floor without taking stairs.
Okay. So even if you're in a
And
wheelchair.
elevators might be in our future.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I was just thinking about the people with disabilities that live there.
Right.
That's got to be
You know,
a
we have big
challenge.
ramps. So they actually were beautifully done. It came out really nice, I have
Yeah.
to say.
I'm curious. Are they cut now? Now you got me thinking. Are they covered? Like I was thinking.
No,
of the
they're not
ice-
covered.
The ice
No, they're not
yesterday.
covered.
Yeah.
And we do move people around as their needs change.
Okay.
So the units are 1 bedrooms and studios. So they're small, but
Yeah.
we have 6 that are handicapped accessible.
Yeah.
And those were recently updated.
You said Fairfield County, right?
Yes, Town of Fairfield.
Town of Fairfield.
Town of Fairfield.
Well, and I'm curious too, because just as I'm thinking about this, I mean, I recently was at a home builders event and they were saying like, please, we need more senior housing. And then there was the back and forth about, well, it's just a short glut with the boomers. And actually the study that one gentleman quoted to me said that it's actually the next 30 years, we're going to need a glut of senior housing. And then at that point, perhaps that could be repurposed, but I'm just thinking that to your point, that 0.3 could create more of that type of housing.
I'm
as well.
actually on the Affordable Housing Committee for Fairfield, and one of the statistics they recently gave us was that in the town of Fairfield, 55% of our 3, 4, and 5 bedroom homes are occupied by 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
And those people would like to have an alternative to
Right.
staying in a 3, 4, or 5 bedroom home at the retirement age of their life. So
I think that is such a critical point that you make, because a lot of times when we talk about the housing shortage, the statistic that, people aren't having as many children is said, or, our census is going down. It's like, that's not the point. The point is people are living alone. And so they're occupying larger spaces than they need to. I'm in a position right now where I can't wait to downsize. So I feel that myself.
yeah,
And
60%
certainly-
of those people are
Yeah.
single women or women living by themselves.
Well, and like I said earlier, one of the fastest growing homeless populations is women over 55. I see it in my own district when I'm knocking doors. That's one of the things that comes up quite often, is that there are women who are living alone and they're really struggling with their rent because their rent is continuing to go up and up. I had one woman who said to me, I used to be able to afford the $25 to go on the bus trip once a month, and now I've had to put that towards my rent, even though the rent went up. I think she said 50 a month. So, just even, it's beyond, having the roof over your head, it's also quality of life. So I
Right.
think that's a really important part of this as well. Any other questions? I don't see any online. Anybody else? Okay, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. That was great. Next up, number 34, Lisa Dalton. Last one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee chairs, Senator Rahman, Representative Kavros DeGraw, ranking members, Senator Gordon, Representative Haynes, and members of the Planning and Development Committee. My name is Lisa Dalton. I am the town clerk in Watertown and the current president of the Connecticut Town Clerks Association. I am pleased to submit oral testimony today in opposition to HB 5393, an act concerning dog licenses. The CTCA represents 169 town and city clerks across Connecticut. Dog licensing and vaccination are public health and safety matters. Public Act 2254 established the Connecticut Dog License Working Group, composed of stakeholders involved in the licensing process. The CTCA was fortunate to have 3 representatives on the 2022 working group, including myself. The group spent many hours to produce a final report outlining a licensing process that would work for all parties. The CTCA continues to support the recommendations contained in that report and the draft bill that followed. Over the past several years, the CTCA has consistently advocated for retaining the annual licensing requirement for the following reasons. A 3-year license cycle increases the risk of lapsed rabies vaccinations, as owners may forget to update shots, creating public health risks. Annual licensing helps ensure rabies vaccinations remain current. Owners are more likely to neglect updating contact information, address changes, or ownership changes over a 3-year period. The proposed language would make it more difficult for town clerks to maintain accurate and up-to-date dog lists, which are essential for animal control officers. Longer intervals may allow irresponsible owners to avoid checking on their dog's health and legal status. Tags are more likely to be lost or damaged over a 3-year period, making it harder to identify lost pets. A 3-year license would also result in the loss of revenue to municipalities. HB 5393 proposes a dual sales structure rather than the single statewide system recommended by the working group. A dual structure creates unnecessary complexity and lacks the consistency of a unified state system in which clerks serve as authorized agents to issue licenses. In Connecticut, the current dog licensing cycle begins July 1 each year, with clerks beginning sales on June 1. Any structural changes should take effect at the start of the sales cycle, June 1, not October 1 as proposed. For the reasons above, the CTCA opposes HB 5393 as written, and I thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on this important legislation, and I would be very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Would you, if we scrapped the entire bill except for the online process, would that be okay with you?
So in the working group, what was discussed, and we had all parties to the table, we had ACOs, we had veterinarians, we had the AKC group represented. There were a multitude of different parties involved. And if there were a statewide dog licensing system, which was run by DOAG as proposed from the working group and the draft legislation, we could be deputized as agents to sell the licenses because many of our customers, our residents, don't have the ability to do an online registration. They may not have a credit card. They may not have the ability to upload a rabies certificate. So similar to how the sports licensing system works, in my town, I sell sports licenses, and that's fishing and hunting licenses. An individual can come here or can do it online, and it's a state-run program by DEEP. And we work out the funding, but that would be a system where everyone could have access. Your ACOs would be able to log in to see if a neighboring town's dog roamed across town line. They could identify that to the owner. Where currently 169 towns are operating individually on our own systems. It just makes better sense to have a one system portal. And so I do invite you to take a look at the working group report that was established.
Thank you so much. We were just talking amongst ourselves if that'll trigger a fiscal note or not, because I'm going to have a conversation with Deep because I have a feeling they might not be in a short session year dying to do that. But we'll have the conversation. Any other questions at this time? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for being here. I may be in touch, or at least I got to go back and find that working group recommendation. But thank you so much. And it is 2:00 on the nose, and that concludes our public hearing for today. We are so happy to have heard from so many good members of the public. It was really a lively discussion today, and we appreciate that. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week we'll see you Friday for our committee meeting at 10:30 a.m. Not sure of the room to A as an apple. Thank you so much. Have a good day.